Chapter 34:20. The principal planned to talk to Li Xianlai on Monday. However, Li Xianlai brought Nuhan to the school on Saturday, saying that he wanted to transfer schools. Transfer schools? Li Xianlai did not mention the reason for the transfer. He only said vaguely, "There are some problems with the business, so we need to move out of town." The principal felt that this was not a simple matter, but Li Xianlai refused to say much. He only said that time was tight and that he needed to complete the procedures as soon as possible. It was not until the weekend that the principal found out that Li Xianlai was there because of Gu Jinglian that he decided to transfer the business to another city. With Li Xianlai's background, Gu Jinglian could crush him with his eyes closed. Li Xianlai knew that he was no match for this man. Therefore he moved his family to another city. In the span of one night they moved away. The principal was also trembling with fear. In the morning he received a call saying that the CEO of the Gu family wanted to see them. He became more and more frightened, not knowing the reason for it. Gu Jinglian arrived an hour in advance. When Gu Jinglian walked in, the man's aura was so intimidating that the principal and Ms. Shui found it difficult to breathe. Teacher Shui glanced at the principal and saw that he was also sweating and uneasy. "What are you nervous about?" Gu Jinglian said expressionlessly, "I think you know who I am." "Yes, we..." Before the principal could say anything, Gu Jinglian interrupted him. "I hope that your school will keep my identity a secret." A secret? He was a little surprised. Teacher Shui was also surprised. She thought that Gu Jinglian wanted them to take special care of Xiaobao. "However, since my son is studying in your school, I hope that the incident on the day of the parent-teacher conference will not happen again." Gu Jinglian paused and said, "You should know that I don't have the patience to deal with these trivial matters." Yes. The principal was shocked and broke out in cold sweat. He quickly nodded. Gu Jinglian also gave some instructions. For example, Xiaobao's physical fitness was not particularly good. He was a little naughty, so he must be disciplined when necessary. Another example was that Xiaobao lacked a sense of security and had a stubborn personality. Hence, she hoped that the homeroom teacher would take care of him more. Mr. Shui naturally agreed. She especially liked Xiaobao. Xiaobao was well-behaved and obedient. Although he could be naughty sometimes, he was very respectful to his teachers. She could tell that although he had never been to kindergarten, he had been taught well since he was young. He was very polite and respectful to his elders. This was something that other children could not compare to. It was quite worry-free. To her surprise, Gu Jinglian did not have any particularly harsh requirements. He only gave them some instructions about Xiaobao before letting them go back. So that was what he was talking about. When the director walked out of Gu's, he felt like he had just survived a disaster. He was so scared that his back turned cold. No matter what, it's better to let the parents know, in case something like this happens again. Mr. Shui also agreed. Therefore, they went back and called the parents of the other children in the class one by one to remind them about this matter. They simply hoped that their children would not bully little Treasure, lest they get into trouble. All the parents knew that Xiaobao came from a powerful family. Hence, when they went back home they either threatened, exhorted, or threatened their children. Chapter 34:21. Monday. Xiaobao went to kindergarten as usual. However, when he skipped to class with his backpack, he felt that the atmosphere in the class was different. Many of the children were avoiding him. Xiaobao sat down on his seat and saw Shang'er turn her head. She looked a little scared as she called out his name tentatively. "Xiaobao." "Morning, Shang'er." Xiaobao smiled brightly and greeted her as usual. Seeing Xiaobao's gentle smile, Shang'er's heart warmed. Her doubts were dispelled and her face returned to its usual expression of closeness. "Morning." Xiaobao looked around and saw that the other children were staring at him. However, when he followed their gazes, the children immediately turned their heads away in fear, not daring to look at him directly. Even the child who usually bullied him the fiercest was careful around him. "So strange." Xiaobao muttered strangely, "Everyone is so strange today. Why are they all looking at me secretly?" "Xiaobao." Shang'er looked around hesitantly. She suddenly stood up, took his hand and pulled him out of the classroom. The moment the two of them left, the classroom burst into an uproar. "Wow. Shang'er is so bold. How would she dare? Shang'er is so amazing." Shang'er only let go of Xiaobao's hand when they were far away from the classroom. "Shang'er, what's going on?" Xiaobao scratched his head strangely. "What can't be said in the classroom?" Before Shang'er could say anything, Xiaobao's eyes lit up and he immediately said, "Ah, I know. There must be some secret, right?" As he said that, he smiled and moved closer to her ear. "Shang'er must only want to tell Xiaobao, right?" Shang'er was so angry that she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She said, "Xiao Bao, don't you feel that something is wrong today?" Now that she mentioned it, Little Treasure also realized it. That's right, something's not right. What's wrong with them? They keep staring at me. I don't know either, but my mom told me to keep a distance from you and not play with you. Xiao Bao heard that and his eyes widened in shock. What? Because my mom said that your dad is super fierce. As she said that, the little girl revealed a fearful expression. Xiao Bao heard that but he couldn't refute. A little? Shang'er heard that and her heart ached. Is your dad also very fierce to you? It's okay, it's just sometimes. Yeah, he's a little fierce. Little Treasure immediately added, but it's still all right. But how did her mother's mom knew that his dad was fierce? Little Treasure stroked his chin and was slightly puzzled. My mother also said that if we made you unhappy, our family would be in trouble. So, she told me to keep a distance from you. Shang'er said fearfully, Xiao Bao, I really like to play with you but my mom won't let me. But I still want to play with you. If I don't do well, don't be angry, okay? She had a pitiful look on her face and was very careful. Xiao Bao tugged at her little hand and pursed his lips. I also like to play with Shang'er. Shang'er, don't listen to your mom. My dad isn't that bad. I don't know either. I also think that your dad is quite good. He's handsome and good at games. Chapter 34:22. Did you know? Nuhan transferred schools. Shang'er said again. Xiao Bao was a little surprised when he heard this. Although he hated Nuhan, the chubby boy's transfer was too sudden. He was still surprised. What's going on? I heard that he made your father angry so he was forced to transfer schools. I heard this from my mother too. Xiao Bao was suddenly in a daze. Recalling the incident in the parking lot, it was true that Nuhan's family was unreasonable and even snatched his toy. He could tell that his father was very angry. However, he couldn't have transferred schools because of such a small matter, right? Xiao Bao naturally did not know that Gu Jinglian had sent people to smash Nuhan's father's car into pieces. Hence, he felt that Nuhan's family was making a mountain out of a molehill. Shang'er was too lazy to think about it. She said to Xiao Bao, I don't care anymore. No matter what, we'll always be good friends, right? Of course. Shang'er will always be my good friend. Xiao Bao held her hand. The two little kids looked at each other and smiled. The two of them returned to the classroom hand in hand. However, they saw the other children looking at Shang'er and Xiao Bao with awe and fear in their eyes. Why does Shang'er still dare to hold hands with Xiao Bao? Shang'er is so pitiful. Don't tell me she likes Xiao Bao? It can't be. When Xiao Bao returned to his seat, he felt countless pairs of eyes staring at him from behind. It was like being pricked by needles. This feeling was very strange. It was as if he had suddenly become an outcast and was being ostracized. Xiao Bao turned around feeling wronged. However, he saw the children immediately shrink their shoulders, looking very afraid of him. Was there a need to be like this? During lunch, Xiao Bao sat in his seat. Other than Shang'er, the other children stayed far away from him. During the afternoon nap, Teacher Shui moved the child sleeping with him to another bed. Xiao Bao did not sleep for the entire afternoon. He sat up and looked at the other beds. The other children were sleeping together. Only he seemed to be left out by the world. How could this be? How did he become an outcast for no reason? Why were so many children distancing themselves from him for no reason? He did not do anything wrong, and did he bully anyone? Why were the children ostracizing him? During the afternoon activity class, Xiao Bao stood alone in the gym. He looked at the other children who were playing in full swing. He felt so wrong that he wanted to cry. Shang'er was about to walk over when a child pulled her back. Shang'er, don't play with Gu Qingzi anymore. What? Because if you make Xiao unhappy, his father's if he's angry, who knows? The children whispered in her ear. Shang'er's expression became much more complicated. She was still hesitating when the other children pulled her away. She looked back at Xiao Bao 3 times with every step, reluctant to leave. Shang'er. Seeing that Shang'er did not want to play with him, Xiao Bao's eyes turned red, but he forced himself not to cry. After school that night, Chuho came to pick him up. However, he saw him sitting in the classroom, motionless and unhappy. All the children were packing their bags nimbly. Only he was staring blankly at the empty table, his face full of worry. Chapter 34:23. Xiao Bao sat alone in his seat, looking gloomy as though he had been alienated by the other children. Chuho was stunned. She walked to his side and helped him pack his bag. However, she saw Xiao Bao looking up at her, looking aggrieved. Mom? Halfway through his sentence, his face darkened and he looked like he was about to cry. Chuho saw this and immediately squatted down. She hugged him and asked curiously, What's wrong? Who bullied you? No one bullied me. Xiao Bao pursed his lips and said, I'd rather someone bullied me. It was precisely because no one bullied him that he felt disappointed. It wasn't that he needed to be abused, but the feeling of being alienated was too lonely. Mom, what did I do wrong? Why do all the children avoid me when they see me? Chu-ho was also confused. That day at the parent-teacher conference, she saw many children surrounding him. Xiao Bao was long and Xiao Bao was short. He was very popular. How did everything change after just one weekend? Xiao Bao poked his finger and said, Did Xiao Bao do something wrong? How could that be? Chu-ho picked him up and comforted him gently. Xiao Bao is so obedient and not naughty. How could he not like Xiao Bao? Xiao Bao leaned on her shoulder sadly. He pursed his lips but didn't say anything. Chu-ho sighed helplessly. She carried him with one hand and carried her bag with the other. When she walked out of the classroom, a group of parents stared at her in shock. Wasn't she too awesome? She carried the child with one hand and carried her bag with the other. She didn't look like she was struggling at all. It was as though she was carrying a ball of cotton. How could this woman be so strong? How could they have known that Chu-ho was an Interpol officer? She used to be a mercenary and had undergone high-intensity physical training. Don't look at how skinny she is. If you roll up your sleeves, you can see that her muscles are well developed. They are not overly muscular, but there is no excess fat. They are all fine muscles. Carrying Xiao Bao with one hand was a piece of cake. When they returned to the Gu residence, Xiao Bao locked himself in the room. He stayed in the room alone and played with building blocks unhappily. These were building blocks that Uncle Fu had bought for him. When Uncle Fu saw that Xiao Bao seemed to be unhappy after coming back, he couldn't help but feel strange. He asked Chu-ho, What's wrong with Xiao Bao? I saw that the little guy was still in high spirits when he went to school. I don't know what happened either. Could it be that he was bullied by other children? How could this be? Chu-ho said, I think a lot of children are alienated from him. Alienate? Yes. Uncle Fu also started to worry. He had thought that this matter would pass quickly. He didn't expect the situation to worsen. It was fine on the first day, but on the second day the children in the class didn't even look at him. Other than the homeroom teacher and the lifestyle teacher, the other children didn't dare to talk to him. Other than Shanger, who was still the same as usual. But sometimes the other children would run up to Shanger and secretly say bad things about him. Don't talk to Xiao Bao. For a moment Xiao Bao was like a ghost in the class. He couldn't be mentioned at all. Xiao Bao suddenly felt depressed. How could it be like this? Was he some kind of plague? They were avoiding him as if he was something. How infuriating. Chapter 34-24. That day Uncle Fu went to wake Xiao Bao up as usual. However, Xiao Bao refused to get out of bed no matter what. He curled up in his bed and refused to go to school. No matter how Uncle Fu coaxed him, he refused to move. In the end he said, Xiao Bao doesn't want to study anymore. When he said this, Uncle Fu realized the seriousness of the matter. It seemed that this little guy had met with some trouble in school. However, no matter how much Uncle Fu asked, Xiao Bao remained wrapped in his blanket. His small body curled up in his bed and he refused to talk to him. He only said, The other children don't like me anyway. It doesn't matter if I go or not. So, I'm not going. When Uncle Fu heard this, he couldn't help but think of Gu Jinglian's childhood. At that time, when Gu Jinglian was in kindergarten, he had initially studied in a private international school. That school was of a higher class than the one Xiao Bao was studying in now. It was an international school. Hence, the children who attended the school were from other countries. Many of them were foreign workers, high-ranking officials in embassies, and senior management of multinational corporations. However, Gu Jinglian was the only one who had a special background. At that time, although the Gu family wasn't as powerful as it was now, they were still powerful enough to be on par with the Mu Corporation. In the beginning, when Gu Jinglian entered the school, the Gu family didn't emphasize his identity too much. However, Uncle Fu had forgotten the exact reason. It seemed that in the kindergarten, a child had provoked Gu Jinglian. In the end, the two children couldn't accept each other's words and started fighting. At that time, Gu Jinglian was only 5 years old. However, he inherited the blood of the Gu family. He didn't talk much, but he didn't have a temper. Once he got angry, he would fight if he could. From the time Gu Jinglian could remember, he didn't talk much. He was taciturn and had a cold temperament. In kindergarten, she wasn't very popular either. Rather than saying that he was unsociable, it was more accurate to say that Gu Jinglian had matured early since he was a child. After all, he grew up in such a family environment. What he saw from a young age was unimaginable to other children. Violence and fighting. When he was very young, he even followed his father to patrol the casinos. Many times he watched as the gamblers, whether they were in debt or cheating, were beaten by a group of people until they wished they were dead. In such an environment, he matured earlier than the other children. In comparison, other children at this age were innocent and naive. As a result, there was a very deep generation gap. Gu Jinglian, on the other hand, disdained to interact with those children. The arrogance in his bones made him isolate himself. However, after entering kindergarten for a period of time, his cold personality had slightly improved. However, during that fight he was careless and didn't know how to control the strength in his hands. As a result, the child was covered in cuts and bruises. 5-year-old children had always been good at imitating. Whatever the adults did, the child would watch from the side and imitate them. Usually, when children fought, they would either grab the child's clothes or give him a soft punch. However, Gu Jinglian pushed the child to the ground, picked up a small stool and smashed it directly on him. His violent personality scared all the children in the class. However, Gu Jinglian didn't know that fighting like this was wrong. Chapter 34:25. What right did he have to give in to a weakling? When he fought, he also used all his strength, but Gu Jinglian was even more ruthless. Ever since that incident, little Jinglian was immediately quarantined by the children in class and became a dangerous person in everyone's eyes. From that day onwards, his character returned to his former cold, arrogant and taciturn personality. No one could fit into his world anymore. When he reached primary school, Gu Jinglian no longer went to school. Instead, he hired a private tutor and studied at the Gu residence. At that time, the Gu family even specially built a private school. Uncle Fu did not expect that Xiao Bao would repeat the same mistake. This was not what he wanted to see. He only hoped that Xiao Bao could grow up safely and healthily like a child from an ordinary family. Seeing that Xiao Bao was really unwilling to go to school, Uncle Fu did not force him. Chu Ho stayed at the Gu residence to accompany Xiao Bao, while Uncle Fu rushed to the casino. "Ah, Master Gu, spare me. I won't do it again." A man's wailing and howling could be heard from the side room of the casino. Gu Jinglian sat calmly on the sofa, holding the teacup lid and gently taking a sip. Beside him, a few thugs picked up iron rods and smashed this person. "Didn't I warn you and give you 5 days to return the money? Do you really think we're a charity organization? Not only are you not returning the money, you're even running away. Where do you think you're running to?" The gambler hugged his head and curled up into a ball on the ground, trembling. He was beaten black and blue and had several broken bones all over his body. "Master, spare me. I won't dare to do it again. I won't dare to run away again. I won't run away again." This gambler owed the casino a few million yuan and had been in debt for 2 years. With the interest compounding, the principal and interest amounted to tens of millions of yuan. Gu Jinglian said that he did not want him to return the principal and interest. At least, he would be forgiven if he returned the principal and added 1,000,000 yuan in interest. This was already considered extremely benevolent. In the end, after giving an ultimatum, this guy actually wanted to run away. However, the capital was so big and the Gu family's influence spread throughout the capital. Every little movement was under their control. Where could he run to? It didn't take much effort to capture him. Naturally, he had to teach him a lesson. The casino had 2 major sources of income. One was the probability advantage of the game. Don't talk about winning and losing, and don't brag about your amazing gambling skills. Gambling skills were a part of it, but it wasn't invincible. Regardless of the rules of the game, the banker's win rate was always above 60%. Other than that, the other part was through the use of high interest rates to become an objective source of profit. Usually, gamblers would want to make more money after winning money at the gambling table. Some games had a high threshold, so borrowing money was a natural thing to do. And those who lost money would naturally be unwilling to accept it. Therefore, they would also want to borrow money to win back the money they lost. They could not rule out the possibility that they were really lucky and won the money back. However, the money they won might not even be enough to pay the interest. If the winner continued to gamble, it was very likely that he would lose everything in an instant and fail at the last hurdle. In other words, very little of the casino's money flowed out. It would always be a cycle. However, some people just could not see through it. There were many people who lost their family fortune overnight. Very few people could leave the casino triumphantly. Chapter 34:26. When Uncle Fu pushed the door open and entered, the man was already on his last breath and was being dragged out. When Gu Jinglian saw him, he raised his eyebrows and asked, "Why are you here?" "Oh master, something has happened," Uncle Fu said vaguely. "What's the matter?" He walked over to Gu Jinglian's ear and whispered a few words. When Gu Jinglian returned to the Gu residence, he went upstairs and hurriedly pushed open the bedroom door. He saw Chu Ho sitting by the window with a helpless look on his face. On the bed, the blanket was bulging. Xiao Bao was curled up under the blanket, motionless. This guy, Gu Jinglian walked over and sat down on the side of the bed. He patted the bed gently with his large palm. The blanket was opened slightly. A pair of red eyes looked out through the opening. When he saw that it was Gu Jinglian, his eyes reddened even more. His eyes were filled with tears and he looked extremely aggrieved. Gu Jinglian glanced at him and his tone became gentler. "What's the matter? Why won't he go to school?" Xiao Bao sullenly shrunk back under the blanket. Even his eyes were not exposed. Gu Jinglian seemed to be deep in thought. He looked at Chu Ho as if asking him what had happened with his eyes. Chu Ho said frankly, "He won't say anything. He's been like this since a few days ago. He said that he's been neglected and alienated by the other kids." Neglected? Gu Jinglian frowned. He could not figure out the reason. At this moment, Xiao Bao's choked voice came from under the blanket. "The other kids don't like me. They don't want to play with me. They're afraid of me, they hate me, they say bad things about me." Gu Jinglian lifted the blanket and saw Xiao Bao curled up on the bed with his arms wrapped around his knees. His face was wet with tears and his eyelashes were clumped together because of his tears. His little mouth was puckered and he looked extremely aggrieved. He stubbornly wiped away his tears, but new tears flowed out. Gu Jinglian could not help but feel sorry for her. He spread out his body and patted his thigh lightly. "Come here." When Xiao Bao heard this, he was initially unmoved. However, after hesitating for a while, he finally crawled to his side on all fours. Gu Jinglian said, "Daddy, carry me." For some reason, because of these 3 words, Xiao Bao's nose became even more sour. Grievances welled up in his heart and he burst into tears. He crawled into Gu Jinglian's arms and wrapped his 2 small hands tightly around his neck. His hands were wet. What was that? Gu Jinglian frowned. He had a perverted obsession with cleanliness. His hands were sticky and he could tell from the touch. His hands were wet with tears. Then she heard him sniff hard. Gu Jinglian's frown deepened. Not just tears? And his snot. The alarm bells in Gu Jinglian's head rang loudly. When Chu Ho saw this, he almost could not help but break down. One had to know that Gu Jinglian's obsession with cleanliness was quite perverted. In the past, there was a subordinate who touched his table without washing his hands. Gu Jinglian flew into a rage on the spot and sent people to disinfect the entire room 3 times. That subordinate was so scared that he was trembling in fear, afraid that he would lose his hands. Not to mention Xiao Bao's hands that were stained with tears and snot. Chu Ho was worried that Gu Jinglian would suddenly fly into a rage. However, the man endured it desperately and kept taking deep breaths. Xiao Bao did not see Gu Jinglian's completely ashen face. He hugged the back of his neck tightly and whimpered bitterly, "I don't want to be hated." Sob, sob, sob. Chapter 34:27. Now that Gu Jinglian was here, Xiao Bao was finally willing to speak. He sobbed as he recounted what had happened. It turned out that all the children in the class thought that he was the one who had caused Nua Han to transfer schools. It was not that the children liked Nua Han, but because of what had happened to Nua Han, they were afraid of Xiao Bao. They might not have seen how Nua Han had ostracized Xiao Bao. They only thought that if they played with Xiao Bao and angered him, then one of them would be the next to transfer schools. For a moment, Gu Qing's name seemed to be regarded as a devil. All the children began to fear him from the bottom of their hearts. Xiao Bao felt extremely wronged. He felt that he had been isolated for no reason. Gu Jinglian's face darkened when he heard this. Uncle Fu had said that something had happened to Xiao Bao. He had thought that it was something important and had taken time out of his busy schedule to come back. In the end, it was because of this. Gu Jinglian pushed his face away in disdain. His voice was extremely cold. "If you don't want to go to school, it's the same at home." Xiao Bao widened his eyes in shock and looked at him with tears in his eyes. What? Gu Jinglian had always had a limit to his patience. He did not like to repeat what he had said a second time. "If you don't want to go to school, it's the same at home." He repeated it patiently. Xiao Bao had originally thought that Gu Jinglian would comfort him or hold him in his arms and coax him. He did not expect that Gu Jinglian would actually say that if he did not want to go, then he should not go. Such unexpected words made Xiao Bao dumbfounded. "What's wrong?" Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows. "You don't want to go? It's the same at home." Even if he did not study or go to school for the rest of his life, Gu Jinglian would still hire the best tutor for him. A diploma was important. But in Gu Jinglian's eyes, it was not worth mentioning. For him, some things that were too formal could be settled with money and power. In other words, Xiaobao could stay in the Gu family and hire a tutor to teach him culture. When he became an adult, he could buy an honorary certificate from a famous university. There was no difference. Tomorrow, I'll get Uncle Fu to find a teacher for you. Just stay at home. No. After hearing what he said, Xiaobao felt indignant. He muttered, I want to go to school. Then why didn't you go to school today? Gu Jinglian asked. Xiaobao was speechless for a moment. Gu Jinglian said, there should be a limit to how willful you can be. If you want to go, then go. If you don't want to go, then don't go. He had to be responsible for his own decisions. You still want others to be responsible for you? Xiaobao. He felt so wronged after being reprimanded. However, he did not dare to defy Gu Jinglian's authority. In Xiaobao's eyes, Gu Jinglian's words were very authoritative. His words were almost like an iron law. Perhaps this was the difference between a father and a mother. The image of a father in a child's heart was great and intimidating. Some things that worked for Chuho might not work for Gu Jinglian. How could he not see Xiaobao's intentions? He had been wronged in school and came home to vent his grievances. Then, through him, the matter would be resolved perfectly. However, he did not want Xiaobao to rely on him too much. Chapter 34:28. Don't. Xiaobao was so nervous that he started to cry again. I don't want to drop out of school. I'll go back to school tomorrow. Good boy. Gu Jinglian patted his head. At the side, Chuho and Uncle Fu were dumbfounded. No matter how they tried to coax him, Xiaobao refused to come out of the blanket. However, Gu Jinglian settled the matter with just a few words. Xiaobao looked at Gu Jinglian pitifully. His pitiful eyes were like those of a helpless puppy. He said softly, but what if the children don't like me? Why don't they like you? Because, Xiaobao sniffled and said, because they think I'm not easy to get along with. Gu Jinglian asked, then do you think I'm easy to get along with? Of course. Xiaobao said seriously, Xiaobao is so cute and obedient. Teacher Shui said that Xiaobao is very likable. Gu Jinglian said, then let them know that you're a child worth getting along with. Xiaobao was enlightened when he heard this. He suddenly realized that he might be able to change the other children's prejudice against him through his own efforts. Gu Jinglian's words seemed to have enlightened him all of a sudden. At this thought, Xiaobao nodded and said, yes. Xiaobao understands now. Gu Jinglian stood up and turned around. However, he saw Uncle Fu staring at him as if he was worshipping a god. Master, I didn't expect you to have such a method to deal with children. Was this considered a form of loosening the reins only to grasp them better? Gu Jinglian adjusted his sleeves casually. His gaze was very cold. Children are delicate. There's no need to spoil them. Uncle Fu was speechless. Chuho's lips twitched. Although Gu Jinglian's way of educating his child seemed unreasonable, she knew that sometimes Xiaobao really needed such a method. The child was too delicate, and in Xiaobao's eyes, Chuho did not seem to have much of a deterrent force. Hence, the child could act coquettishly however he wanted because baby Chu felt that he would definitely indulge him. However, Gu Jinglian was different. What he said just now was not wrong. If he wanted to go, he would go. If he didn't want to go, he wouldn't go. Learning to deal with one's own problems was a form of growth. He was his father, but he would not spoil him blindly. This was his principle. She didn't expect him to have such a good view of educating children. He did not indulge Xiaobao unconditionally just because he was his son. After settling Xiaobao's matter, Gu Jinglian returned to the office. He had been busy recently and sometimes he even came home very late. After Gu Jinglian left, Xiaobao also got out of bed and played with his toys in the room. Chuho looked for Uncle Fu because she had something to discuss with him. I submitted a resume a while ago, and now the company's HR department has asked me to go to work. Uncle Fu was a little surprised when he heard this. You found a job? Yes, I've recovered a little. It's time to find a job. She had to thank Uncle Fu for getting her various identification documents ready. She thought that she couldn't stay in the Gu family forever and do nothing. She couldn't stay idle and she didn't like to live a life of being taken care of. Uncle Fu hesitated for a moment and asked casually, what job? Anti-mafia police. What the hell? Uncle Fu was confused. There was no need to elaborate on Gu Jinglian's identity. Chapter 34:29. One black and one white, the other black and white, the other black and white. It was simply wonderful. Chuho saw that Uncle Fu's expression was a little strange and couldn't help but ask, is there a problem? Are you sure you want to do this job? Uncle Fu said vaguely, old master will be very angry if he finds out. What right does he have to be angry? Chu Ho said unhappily, "Do I need to ask for his opinion on what kind of job I want?" Cough, cough, cough. Uncle Fu cleared his throat and said, "Xiao Bao must be the most special child." "Why do you say that? Dad is black and Mom is black and white." This. Uncle Fu looked a little embarrassed. Chu Ho was speechless. At night, Gu Jinglian returned to the Gu residence from the company. He had just gone upstairs when Uncle Fu saw that he was back and immediately went up to him. "Old master?" He saw that Uncle Fu looked hesitant and didn't know what was going on. He raised his eyebrows and thought that something had happened to Xiao Bao again. "What is it?" "It's like this." Uncle Fu cleared his throat and wanted to talk to him about this matter. "Chu Ho has found a job." Gu Jinglian was slightly stunned when he heard this. Why is she looking for a job? She said that she wants to rely on herself to support herself. Uncle Fu said truthfully. During this period, Chu Ho had been idle at home because of her health and did not have any source of income. All her expenses were paid by the Gu family. Sometimes Chu Ho would pick Xiao Bao up from school and Xiao Bao would ask her to buy him any toys that he wanted. However, she didn't have any money on her. Many times she had to bite the bullet and ask Uncle Fu to buy the toys for her. Then Uncle Fu would buy the toys for her. It wasn't that Uncle Fu didn't want to give her money, but she felt that it was too embarrassing to take someone else's money. Chu Ho had a strong personality and never liked to live under someone else's roof. Therefore, after her health improved a little, she submitted a few resumes. In fact, the police station did not have an anti-gang position, but most police stations would have an anti-gang department. Thus, the anti-mafia police department was created. However, the organization of the anti-mafia department was different from that of the ordinary police. This department had even stricter requirements for the police. Other than skills and mobility, all other qualities had to be taken into consideration. However, the salary was not much higher, but it was a very dangerous job. Walking in the rain of bullets, it was rare to get injured, but it was common to lose one's life. Therefore, most of the people who were recruited for this profession were retired soldiers or those who were transferred from the special forces. Therefore, this position was not very glamorous, and it was very difficult to recruit anyone. After all, the mindset of young people nowadays was different from before. Their lives were above everything else. As an outstanding police officer of the Interpol, Chu Ho was naturally qualified for this job. Gu Jinglian seemed indifferent and asked casually, "What kind of work?" Uncle Fu said cautiously, "Police." Gu Jinglian was stunned. He turned around and looked at him in surprise. "Police?" "Yes. I heard that it's the anti-mafia police." Gu Jinglian was speechless. How dare she? Who does she want to go against? Uncle Fu was speechless. Gu Jinglian said unhappily, "Why did she want to do this job for no reason?" "Because there's no income." Chapter 34:30. Previously, when Chu Ho was still recuperating, Uncle Fu had asked Gu Jinglian for advice. After careful consideration, he decided to let Chu Ho stay for Xiao Bao's sake. Moreover, he instructed Uncle Fu to transfer $3 million to her account every month. This was a considerable sum of money. After all, if she stayed in the Gu family, she would not need to spend money in most cases. $3 million was just her daily expenses. "I did, but she didn't want it." Uncle Fu felt wronged and immediately tried to defend himself. "She didn't want it? Why not?" "Because," Uncle Fu explained, "she said that you have a soft mouth when you've received gifts." Uncle Fu continued, "I can see that this girl is quite headstrong. Basically, she doesn't want to accept any favors from others. I didn't expect that she couldn't wait to look for a job as soon as she recovered." Gu Jinglian frowned tiredly and said plainly, "She can look for any job she wants. In the future, there's no need to specially report to me about this kind of thing." He turned around and went into his room, closing the door behind him. What a strange woman. Uncle Fu stood outside the door in a daze. It took him a while to come back to his senses and leave. The next morning, Xiao Bao really got out of bed very early. Yesterday, Gu Jinglian's words to him were really effective. Hence, when Chu Ho came to the room, he was already dressed and packed his school bag. He looked ready to go. Chu Ho sent Xiao Bao to school and reported to the police station. When they heard that there was a new trainee police officer who was directly employed in the anti-mafia department, many of the police officers in the police station were very curious. When Chu Ho appeared in the meeting room, everyone saw that she was actually a young woman. For a moment, they were stunned. Chu Ho stood in front of the podium with her hands behind her back. Her posture was straight and her expression was serious. However, her delicate and pretty face made it difficult for people to associate her with a well-trained anti-mafia police officer. In the anti-mafia department, there were very few female members. This position was extremely dangerous. Whenever he went in and out of certain places, it was inevitable that he would encounter unexpected situations. The reason why there was a vacancy in this position and the need for new blood was because 3 police officers were injured during a special mission. They had no choice but to transfer to the administrative department. Hence, there was a vacancy. Usually, this position had strict requirements and was strenuous and unrewarding. Hence, even retired soldiers who were not specially recruited were not willing to join. However, the sudden appearance of a woman in the morning meeting surprised everyone. Some of the police officers laughed contemptuously and secretly cursed. Could it be that they really couldn't find anyone? They actually recruited a little girl. "Boss, why did you recruit a girl into the department?" Some of the police officers questioned him. His words seemed to resonate with them. "That's right. Is our team really unable to recruit any more people? They recruited a girl. I think it's strange too. This little girl has thin arms and legs. She doesn't have any skills, yet they still recruited her to drag us down?" Everyone's doubts were not without reason. After all, women were at a disadvantage compared to men. Prejudice, of course, was unavoidable. Chapter 34-31. We still don't know who will be the one dragging us down. The moment she said that, a few of the burly police officers were indignant. Damn it, they were being teased by a newbie. And it was a woman. Looking at Chu-Ho's arrogant expression and her eyes full of sarcasm, it was obvious that she looked down on these senior police officers. One of the police officers slammed the table and stood up. Many of the people present were veterans, so they were all hot-blooded men. When they heard this, they could not sit still. The counselor at the podium saw this and scolded, "Sit down." "Captain, I told you to sit down. Did you hear me? You don't even want to obey my orders?" The anti-gang team was all about obedience. Usually they could laugh and joke around, but when the captain gave an order, no one dared to disobey. The man snorted coldly and sat down. The counselor said, "Let me introduce you. This is the new trainee police officer of the anti-gang team. Her name is Chu-Ho. In the future we will be comrades in our team. Please take care of us." Chu-Ho walked to the podium and stood in a standard posture. She introduced herself, "My name is Chu-Ho. Please take care of me." After that, she bent over and gave a standard bow to show her respect as a new police officer to her senior. After the morning assembly, Chu-Ho needed to register. Following that, there would be a week-long induction training and a 1-month internship. After a month, there would be a strict assessment. If she passed the assessment, she would be officially part of the force. When Chu-Ho walked out of the door, a few of the police officers looked at each other and exchanged glances. One of the men walked towards her and reached out to grab her shoulder. Chu-Ho grabbed his arm without looking back. Then, almost like a sudden clap of thunder, she threw him into the backpack. There was a loud bang. The man was thrown to the ground heavily, and he arched his body in pain. The cold marble floor was cold and hard. Chu-Ho turned around expressionlessly and sneered, "If you wanted to test the skills of a newbie, you wouldn't have to resort to such a despicable method like a sneak attack." The man turned pale with fright as he stared at her in a daze. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't figure out how Chu-Ho's seemingly delicate body contained so much energy. It was too terrifying. Chu-Ho clapped his hands lightly and said, "Unfortunately, I have to attend the training soon. Otherwise, I would be able to spar with Senior." Behind him, several police officers rushed out of the meeting room and stared blankly at the scene, feeling incredulous. "Brother, why are you flirting?" "Shameful." The man got up from the ground and clenched his fists. Just as he was about to walk toward Chu-Ho, the shorter police officer behind him immediately pulled him back. "All right, don't be impulsive. Don't make things difficult for a newcomer." "That's right, Brother Hui. Don't let your emotions affect your decisions. If the counselor finds out, you'll definitely be punished." Only then did the man restrain his anger, turn around and leave. Chu-Ho thought to himself, "You're crazy." The entire day was filled with training. However, what surprised the instructor was that Chu-Ho's aptitude was quite outstanding. Chu-Ho could complete some of the more difficult training tasks with extremely high standards. When the training ended, the instructor called Chu-Ho to the side and asked carefully, "Have you been a soldier before?" Chu-Ho raised his eyebrows and said indifferently, "Yes." "Retired veteran? Mercenary?" The instructor's mouth was wide open. Chapter 34-32. Chu-Ho used to be from a mercenary group and was a top mercenary. After that, he officially joined the Interpol and worked at the headquarters. The instructor asked again, "Did you really work as a mercenary?" Not really. Oh? The Chu Ho said, I used to be a police officer. What police officer? Chu Ho said seriously, I'm the top anti-corruption inspector at the Interpol headquarters. The instructor was at a loss for words. Interpol. That was an international police organization. They were the elites of the elites. They were all top international police officers. In other words, an anti-corruption inspector was a very high position. If he was really an anti-corruption inspector, he would receive a very high standard of reception when he went to other countries. Are you kidding? The man looked incredulous. Chu Ho said coldly, Instructor, do I look like I'm joking? The instructor was speechless. He didn't look like it. But, according to his understanding, the international anti-corruption inspector changed every 5 years. The last one was indeed a female member. Moreover, this female member was the first in the history of anti-corruption inspectors to be a female. Could it be, it was her? Then what was the point of teaching? She should be the one teaching him. If someone else said this, he might have doubted it. However, Chu Ho was so outstanding that he announced his graduation in one day. Because she didn't need to receive any training at all. As soon as Chu Ho left the police station, the instructor ran to the counselor to ask where Chu Ho came from. The political and law exam. The application form was submitted directly from the entrance of the official website. Then she took the political and law exam and was directly admitted. What's wrong, Instructor Zhang? Is there a problem with her? You let her take part in the induction training? She should be the one to train us. Chu Ho arrived at the kindergarten on time. At the door of the classroom he saw Xiaobao packing his bag. Shang'er saw Chu Ho outside the window and exclaimed, Xiaobao, your mother is here to pick you up. Xiaobao raised his head. His gloomy face finally regained some color. He carried his backpack and walked out of the classroom. He threw himself into Chu Ho's arms, looking a little aggrieved. Mom, the kids are still ignoring me. On the way back, Xiaobao was still unhappy. When Chu Ho asked him again, Xiaobao finally said, I tried to talk to them but they kept away from me, as if I was a big monster. He did as Gu Jinglian said and tried his best to be responsible for his own affairs. However, the child was still unwilling to talk to him. He was vexed. Chu Ho picked him up and kissed his rosy cheeks tenderly. Don't rush. Take your time. Chu Ho suddenly asked, Your birthday is coming up. Have you thought about what kind of birthday party you're going to hold? Xiaobao poked his finger and said, I want to spend it with Shang Jin. Chu Ho remembered. The little girl sitting in front of you? Yeah. Do you like her? Xiaobao blushed and immediately said, No, look at you. Your face is red. You still say you don't like her? Chapter 34-33. Sure. Xiaobao was excited. However, he suddenly thought of something and hesitated. What if they don't want to come? Why would they? Chu Ho smiled. If it's a sincere invitation, why wouldn't they want to come? Xiaobao, don't you know how to draw? You can make an invitation letter for each of the children and invite them to your birthday party. Xiaobao nodded heavily. Chu Ho brought Xiaobao around the stationery store and bought watercolor pens, colored pencils and cardboard cards. When they got home and had dinner, Xiaobao and Chu Ho started the huge project. Let's make one for Shang'er first. With that thought in mind, Xiaobao began to move. However, how should he make the invitation card? Xiaobao was in a dilemma. Chu Ho asked him, Aren't you good at drawing? Draw Shang, or then draw you and write some words. That's it. Xiaobao was inspired. Hence, he held the pencil and started to draw stroke by stroke. When Uncle Fu walked in, Xiaobao had already finished drawing Shang. He had a strong talent for drawing. Although the Shang'er he drew was not as realistic as the sketch, the cartoon version of Shang had a pair of big watery eyes, a small nose and cherry lips. She was wearing a beautiful dress and standing in front of a beautiful castle. Xiaobao added himself. The two of them were holding hands and flowers were blooming in front of them. It was a childish romance. Chu Ho thought to himself, when this kid grows up, he'll definitely be good at getting girls to like him. I'm done. Xiaobao showed the completed invitation card to Chu Ho and Uncle Fu. The latter was stunned. Xiaobao's drawing is so good? Yeah. Did he learn how to draw before? Chu Ho shook his head. No, he seems to have been born with a natural talent for drawing. Uncle Fu smiled. Then she must have inherited old master's talent in painting. When Chu Ho heard this, he was stunned. Is Gu Jinglian very good at painting? Old master is good at painting. When he was young, his landscape painting was exhibited in an art gallery. It was bought at a high price of 100,000 yuan. Xiaobao was astonished. Daddy, you're so good at painting? Master's calligraphy is also very good. Gu Jinglian's handwriting was definitely the most beautiful that Uncle Fu had ever seen. It was bold and powerful like a dragon flying and a phoenix dancing. He had never seen anyone with better calligraphy than Gu Jinglian, including famous calligraphers. Then let Daddy write for me. As Xiao Bao spoke, he took the card and ran to Gu Jinglian's room. Gu Jinglian was reading when Xiao Bao placed the invitation card in front of him. He said confidently, "Daddy, Daddy, help me write a few words." This little guy always had a way to disturb him. However, Gu Jinglian couldn't do anything about him. He picked up the invitation card and saw a vivid cartoon drawing on it. For a moment he was slightly stunned. "You drew this?" "Yeah. Xiao Bao's birthday is next month. This is the invitation card." "Birthday?" Gu Jinglian remembered that it was indeed his birthday next month. He picked up the fountain pen and asked, "What should I write?" "Well, just write Dear Shang. I really hope that you can come to my birthday party." Gu Jinglian picked up the pen and wrote it down before handing it to him. Xiao Bao took the invitation card from him and glanced at it. He was also impressed by Gu Jinglian's elegant handwriting. Chapter 34-34. Daddy's handwriting is so beautiful. Gu Jinglian's ears really liked this compliment. After finishing the card, Xiao Bao felt sleepy. After all, the time at night was limited. By the time he finished the card, it was already 8 o'clock in the evening. After taking a shower and brushing his teeth, he went back to bed to rest. The next morning, Xiao Bao went to class and secretly stuffed the invitation card under Shang'er's desk. He was a little embarrassed to give it to her face. Shang'er went to class and was about to stuff her bag under her desk when she noticed something in it. She took it out and found that it was something like a card. She flipped it open and saw a cartoon drawing of a little girl in a dress and a boy in a suit standing in front of a castle. They were holding hands and looked very cute. She could recognize some of the words and understood that it said, "Dear Shang'er, I really hope that you can come to my birthday party. Gu Qingza." Shang'er took the invitation card and turned around. She saw Xiao Bao sitting in his seat with a red face and looking a little restless. She smiled and asked, "Xiao Bao, did you stuff this in my desk?" "Yes, yes." "Your birthday is coming up soon?" "Yes." Xiao Bao said seriously, "My mom, dad and I made this together. Mom was in charge of making the invitation card, I was in charge of drawing, and Dad wrote the words." "Wow!" Shang'er exclaimed, "You drew this? Isn't it too beautiful?" Her voice was a little loud and almost the whole class heard her. When the other children saw this, they immediately crowded around and fought to take the invitation card from Shang'er's hands. They all exclaimed one after another, "What a beautiful drawing! Xiao Bao, did you really draw this?" For a moment, the children forgot that Xiao Bao was a dangerous person, and could not help but envy Shang'er for being able to receive such an invitation card. Shang'er said proudly, "Xiao Bao gave me the invitation card." Xiao Bao said that he drew the drawing, his mom made the invitation card, and his dad wrote the words. "Oh my God! I thought you bought it? Even the ones you buy aren't as beautiful as this. Look at the handwriting, it's even better than the handwriting in books. Did Xiao Bao really do this himself? I can't believe it." For a moment, Xiao Bao was extremely pleased with himself. The children took turns to praise him, making him feel like he was floating in the clouds. For the entire day, Shang'er hugged the invitation card lovingly. This was made by Xiao Bao himself. Moreover, she was the only one in the entire class who received it. The other children were extremely envious. Xiao Bao said that all the children in the class had one. However, Shang'er was the first to receive it. This meant that Xiao Bao treated her as his best friend. When they got home, Xiao Bao was as happy as a bird. He talked to Chu Ho non-stop. "Mom, did you know? Gina really likes the invitation card I sent her. She said that she would keep it for the rest of her life. The other kids are so envious of Shang. Some of the kids secretly asked me if I made him an invitation card. He said that he wanted to come to my birthday party too." When Chu Ho heard this, she felt gratified. After dinner, Xiao Bao started the huge project again. He made 2 cards in one go. His desk mate was a girl who liked to read comic books, especially Balala Xiaomaxian. Hence he made the girl look like Xiaomaxian. Chapter 34-35. It had to be said that Xiao Bao was a very creative child. Every child's invitation card wasn't monotonous or rigid. For example, Shang once said that she wanted to live in a dreamy castle with a large back garden filled with flowers. So, on the invitation card, he drew a castle and flowers, and even carefully put a crown on her head. Shang loved it so much that she couldn't put it down, and the other children in the class were envious. And when the 2 children's cards were brought to class, the 2 children were extremely excited. Wow. Xiaobao drew me so handsome. This child especially liked football and he played very well. Xiaobao drew a jersey for him and it was very impressive. And the other girl liked to watch Balala Xiaomaxian, so Xiaobao drew her as a devil fairy. When the girl saw the invitation card, she treasured it to the extreme. From this, it could be seen that Xiaobao was actually a very meticulous child. He knew how to observe the strengths of each child or the things that they liked. The sunflower class was in an uproar. This was because Xiaobao could draw at most 2 cards every night, and then it was time to go to bed. After 3 days, only 5 children in the class received an invitation card. The other children were envious, but they could only look forward to whether or not they would receive Xiaobao's birthday invitation card. For a moment, they had forgotten that Xiaobao was the number 1 dangerous person, in the eyes of all parents. But because they were reserved, they were a little embarrassed to take the initiative to ask Xiaobao if he would draw their invitation cards. So, they could only look forward to it. Some children even came to class early, and then nervously rummaged through their desks. If they saw an invitation card, they would definitely show it off to everyone. Those who didn't receive it would have a face of disappointment, and there were even some who would be depressed and listless for the whole day. To them, this was not just a birthday invitation card. Because of the invitation card, Xiaobao's relationship with the other children in the class gradually warmed up. Perhaps Xiaobao didn't realize, but now he and the other children had recovered their close relationship. As soon as Xiaobao arrived in class, all the children stared at his every move. Their eyes were filled with yearning and curiosity as they stared at his hand. Their gazes followed him, wanting to see who his new invitation card was for. Those who didn't receive it would naturally sigh. The children who received the invitation card would bring it home and tell their parents about it. Most of the parents were reasonable. Seeing that Xiaobao's family was so thoughtful, and that they even personally drew a card, they changed their views. Almost all the children who received the invitation cards were allowed by their parents to attend Xiaobao's birthday party. Chu He, on the other hand, was keenly aware of it. Sometimes, when she went to pick up baby Chu after work, she would see many children excitedly surrounding him and asking him questions. Xiaobao, who are you going to draw today? Draw me, draw me. Xiaobao, I'll definitely go to your birthday party. When the time comes, I'll definitely prepare an awesome gift for you. So, can you give me an invitation card that you drew for me? On the way back, Chu Ho couldn't help but ask him, how many invitation cards are left? Chapter 34-36. Daddy's handwriting is so beautiful. Gu Jinglian's ears really liked this compliment. After finishing the card, Xiaobao felt sleepy. After all, the time at night was limited. By the time he finished the card, it was already 8 o'clock in the evening. After taking a shower and brushing his teeth, he went back to bed to rest. The next morning, Xiaobao went to class and secretly stuffed the invitation card under Shang'er's desk. He was a little embarrassed to give it to her face. Shang'er went to class and was about to stuff her bag under her desk when she noticed something in it. She took it out and found that it was something like a card. She flipped it open and saw a cartoon drawing of a little girl in a dress and a boy in a suit standing in front of a castle. They were holding hands and looked very cute. She could recognize some of the words and understood that it said, "Dear Shang'er, I really hope that you can come to my birthday party. Gu Qingza." Shang'er took the invitation card and turned around. She saw Xiaobao sitting in his seat with a red face and looking a little restless. She smiled and asked, "Xiaobao, did you stuff this in my desk?" "Yes, yes." "Your birthday is coming up soon?" "Yes." Xiaobao said seriously, "My mom, dad and I made this together. Mom was in charge of making the invitation card, I was in charge of drawing, and Dad wrote the words." "Wow!" Shang'er exclaimed, "You drew this. Isn't it too beautiful?" Her voice was a little loud and almost the whole class heard her. When the other children saw this, they immediately crowded around and fought to take the invitation card from Shang'er's hands. They all exclaimed one after another, "What a beautiful drawing! Xiaobao, did you really draw this?" For a moment, the children forgot that Xiaobao was a dangerous person, and could not help but envy Shang'er for being able to receive such an invitation card. Shang'er said proudly, "Xiaobao gave me the invitation card." Xiaobao said that he drew the drawing, his mom made the invitation card, and his dad wrote the words. "Oh my god. I thought you bought it. Even the ones you buy aren't as beautiful as this. Look at the handwriting, it's even better than the handwriting in books. Did Xiaobao really do this himself? I can't believe it." For a moment, Xiaobao was extremely pleased with himself. The children took turns to praise him, making him feel like he was floating in the clouds. For the entire day, Shang'er hugged the invitation card lovingly. This was made by Xiaobao himself. Moreover, she was the only one in the entire class who received it. The other children were extremely envious. Xiaobao said that all the children in the class had one. However, Shang'er was the first to receive it. This meant that Xiaobao treated her as his best friend. When they got home, Xiaobao was as happy as a bird. He talked to Chuho non-stop. "Mom, did you know? Gina really likes the invitation card I sent her. She said that she would keep it for the rest of her life. The other kids are so envious of Shang. Some of the kids secretly asked me if I made him an invitation card. He said that he wanted to come to my birthday party too." When Chuho heard this, she felt gratified. After dinner, Xiaobao started the huge project again. He made 2 cards in one go. His desk mate was a girl who liked to read comic books, especially Balala Xiaomaxian. Hence he made the girl look like Xiaomaxian. Chapter 34-37. "Oh," Chuho replied. Then she stood aside and kept quiet. She was too lazy to waste her breath on them. Since the captain had sent her to carry out the mission, she would just do as she was told. Before she knew it, it was already midnight. Singing and dancing, neon lights flashed. The nightlife of the bustling city seemed to have just begun. Neon Paradise was located on the same street as the bar. However, the facade was not big and was hidden in a corner. After midnight, seeing that it was almost time, the police officer in charge immediately waved his hand. A few of his subordinates pretended to be customers and entered the KTV one after another. When they walked into the KTV, they saw a big round table. As the KTV entered the midnight area, in order to attract more people, many girls in bathing suits stood on the dance floor and showed off their supplies. They danced provocatively to attract attention. "Vice Captain, we found the room 4302. A colleague's low voice came from the earpiece. The vice captain turned around and glanced at the crowd. He said slowly, 4302, one of you go and check how many people are in the room." Chuho was about to walk out, but someone was faster than her. A tall and thin man stood out. "Vice Captain, I'm more familiar with the terrain here. I'll go and check the situation first." "Okay, go and see how many people are in the room." "Okay." That person left quickly. In less than 10 minutes he came back and said, "There are about 10 people in the room. At the end of the corridor, the room with the loudest music is there." The doors of KTV rooms were often made of transparent glass. Through the glass he saw 6 or 7 men inside, each holding a woman. They were smoking and swaying their bodies to the loud music. He saw a pile of cash on the table and a lot of cash scattered on the floor. It basically confirmed the fact that they were smoking and gambling. They seemed to be almost done drinking. Some of them have lost consciousness and are standing there dancing. The vice captain stood up and ordered, "Arrest them." A few police officers immediately walked towards 4302. They couldn't wait to finish the mission and go home to sleep. He was too tired. He had worked all day and returned home at night. He had just eaten dinner and had not laid on the bed to rest when he received a call from the captain. Chuho remembered that every member of the anti-corruption team had signed a life and death agreement. The so-called life and death contract, the police station would list out a contract, on which all kinds of accidents would be written. Therefore, when they joined the anti-mafia group, they all knew that this position was dangerous. Moreover, it was a thankless task. The bars in Beijing were the hardest-hit areas. The few of them walked to the door of room 4302 one after another. 2 on the left and 2 on the right. They stood at the door waiting for the right opportunity. Chuho finally lost his patience. If they continued to wait like this, how long would it take? It was just catching a few criminals. Was there a need to waste so much effort? She walked to the door, and before the police officers could react, they watched her raise her foot and kick the door open. The sudden loud noise frightened everyone in the room. This was especially true for the women. They were so frightened by this huge commotion that their faces turned pale. A few police officers were secretly angry at her for acting rashly. They gritted their teeth in hatred. This newbie only knew how to delay and regret. Why did she have to beat the grass and scare the snake? Chapter 34-38. This stupid woman, why did she have to alert the enemy? However, they did not have time to complain. They immediately pulled out their pistols from their waists and rushed in. "Don't move. Put your hands up and squat on the floor. Hurry." Screams could be heard everywhere. In the air there was a strange aroma and a strong smell of alcohol. On the floor, there were many bottles of alcohol and red banknotes spread out on the floor, forming a thick stack. Chuho frowned. However, in the private room, a man with 2 women in his arms laughed coldly. "Who are you? Damn it. You've ruined my mood." It was obvious that the atmosphere was at its climax. Chuhi's sudden intrusion had spoiled their mood. Even an idiot could tell that these people, who were wearing ordinary clothes and holding pistols, were plainclothes policemen. However, they were not afraid. A few burly men slammed their pistols on the table. With cigarettes in their mouths, they sneered, "Are you new police officers? Do you know who our boss is? It's not your place to be so presumptuous. Don't blame us for being rude if you ruin our boss's mood." The police officers looked at each other. Just as they were at a loss as to how to end the situation, Chu-hee suddenly smirked. She picked up a wine bottle with the tip of her foot and held it in her hand. She threw the bottle at the officer who was about to load his gun, and it hit his wrist. The bottle shattered. The man cried out in shock. His wrist shook and the pistol fell to the floor. The man cursed and immediately bent down to pick it up. Chu-hee, on the other hand, was quick to react. With a kick on the stairs, she leaped into the air and landed a dashing flying kick on his nose. The man groaned. Due to the huge inertia, he flew a few meters away. Everyone was dumbfounded. Chu-ho's kick was too cool. They did not expect her to be so strong when she was so skinny. One had to know that this man was so tall and sturdy, yet he was sent flying by her kick. While everyone was still in a daze, Chu-ho casually grabbed the gun and loaded it in half a second. She glanced around the room and shouted, "Put your hands on your head and squat on the ground. Don't move." A middle-aged man, who was surrounded by a crowd of people and looked like a boss, slammed the table angrily and stood up. He pointed at her nose and scolded, "Who do you think you are? How dare you behave so atrociously in my territory? Are you trying to show off to me?" Chu-ho didn't have the patience to listen to his nonsense. He flipped over to the table, picked up the wine bottle and smashed it toward his face. Only a clang sound was heard. In the next second there was the sound of a wine bottle shattering. The bottle exploded on the man's face, and his nose was broken by her. Everyone was even more dumbfounded. F*CK, UF*King B*T, how dare you hit me? The man covered his bleeding nose, pointed at Chu-ho and shouted, "Go!" A group of men rushed toward Chu-hee in a hubbub. Clang, crash, clang, 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 clang. 2 minutes later, a few police officers looked at the mess on the floor in shock. In just a moment, the man who was sitting on the sofa was rolling on the floor in pain. Chapter 34-39. There were so many men, but this woman had taken care of them all by herself. The police officers were in disbelief. Chu-ho looked around and saw her colleagues behind her looking as if they had seen a ghost. She frowned. "What are you all standing there for?" It was only after she had spoken that everyone came to their senses. Where are the handcuffs?" Chu-ho said angrily, "Cuff them up." "Oh." The police officer was shocked and immediately took out the handcuffs to tie them up one by one. When he called the captain to report to him, he was still waiting anxiously at the police station for news. After all, the target of this operation was an underworld organization with a strong background in the city. They specialized in selling drugs and had a group of prostitutes under them who were involved in sex trafficking. The anti-mafia team had been watching them for a long time and had been waiting for an opportunity to take action. They were worried that some of their colleagues would be injured in this operation. They were especially worried about Chu-ho. She was a woman, and although she had skills, but just as the captain was thinking about this, his cell phone rang. He was shocked. It had not been long since they took action. Could it be what had happened? He picked up the phone in fear. It was Chu-ho's voice. "Captain, we're about to pack up." "Pack up?" The captain furrowed his brows. "They ran away? They're on the way back to the police station. We've caught them and are about to bring them back for interrogation." The captain opened his mouth wide in shock. He looked as if he had seen a ghost. So fast. That was too fast. He could not believe it. However, when Chu-ho and a few other police officers brought the 15 suspects back to the police station, the captain finally believed it. Originally, the few experienced police officers in the anti-mafia team looked down on Chu-ho. She was just a woman, yet she was in the anti-mafia team. No one was convinced. However, after this experience, they saw with their own eyes that she had subdued the 15 suspects within a few minutes. Especially her outstanding skills, it was simply shocking to the point that people's eyeballs almost popped out. At this moment, the others were completely convinced. You really could not judge a book by its cover. Just by looking at her appearance, it was hard to imagine that Chu-hee's weak body contained so much energy. How did she do it? This woman's background was not simple. One of the police officers had not recovered from the thrilling scene just now. He walked up to the captain and asked in surprise, "Captain, this new woman, is she really a woman?" Her skills, her courage, and her calmness in the face of trouble really made these men feel inferior. The captain frowned and asked, "What happened just now?" Just now. Before he could finish speaking, Chu-ho walked to the captain and said, "The mission is over." The captain immediately came back to his senses, nodded and said with a smile, "Thank you for your hard work. Or I have a car. Why do you need to take a taxi? I'll send you back. You've worked hard today. I'm worried about you walking alone at night." Could it be that captain is worried that I'll be attacked by criminals while walking at night? The captain was speechless. There was really nothing to worry about. Chapter 3440. The captain said, "Give me a call when you get home." Chu-ho nodded. When she turned around, she broke out in a cold sweat. How could she let the captain of the anti-corruption team send her back to the Gu family? If he looked up and saw that she was staying with the Gu family and recognized the Gu family mansion, he would definitely be in a mess. She was about to leave when the captain called out to her from behind. "Chu-ho." "Yes." She came back to her senses and looked back abruptly. Her elegant face, however, was a man who was more than 1.8 meters tall. His face immediately turned red. He stammered for a long time, but he couldn't think of what he was going to say. Thus he stammered, Be careful on the road." "Okay, don't worry. I'll be fine." Chu-ho left after saying that. A few policemen came up to him. Seeing that the captain was blushing, they couldn't help but tease him. "The captain is blushing. How rare. How rare. Don't tell me you've taken a fancy to her." The captain said angrily, "What nonsense are you talking about? Hurry up and interrogate the criminal." The few of them turned around resentfully and walked towards the interrogation room. The captain seemed to have thought of something and said sternly, "Wait. What's the matter?" "I thought of what I was going to say." The captain said, "Since Chu-ho has just joined our anti-corruption team, let's hold a welcome banquet for her tomorrow night. In any case, as her seniors, we have to properly entertain this new policewoman, don't we?" The few of them looked at each other but didn't object. After tonight's operation, everyone's impression of Chu-ho had changed. They had originally thought that this woman wouldn't have any skills and that they would have to take care of her while carrying out the mission. In the end, they didn't expect that she would be the most capable one. Those who had been prejudiced against her were completely dispelled now. It settled then. When Chu-ho reached home, it was already 1 o'clock in the morning. Xiao Bao was originally asleep, but no matter how careful she was, she still woke the little guy up. Because Chu-ho was not around, the little guy did not sleep well. In the middle of the night he heard some noises. When he opened his eyes, he saw Chu-ho enter the room quietly. She didn't seem to realize that Xiao Bao had woken up, so she still tiptoed and changed into her pajamas. Just as she was about to get into bed, she suddenly thought of something. She took out her phone and dialed a number. The call was quickly picked up. "Chu-ho, are you home yet?" The room was so quiet that the man's voice on the phone was so obvious. Xiao Bao widened his eyes in shock. Why was it a man's voice? Moreover, his tone was so gentle. Could it be another bad guy trying to take advantage of her mother? Chu-ho obviously did not notice Xiao Bao's angry expression behind him. He said into the phone, "Captain, I'm home." "Oh, that's good. You should rest early. I still have to work tomorrow." "Okay, got it." Chu-ho hung up the phone and turned around. Xiao Bao immediately closed his eyes and pretended to be asleep. She quietly got into bed, tucked him in and hugged him to sleep. She fell asleep very quickly, but Xiao Bao suddenly had insomnia. Thinking of that man's unfamiliar phone call, he was suddenly filled with vigilance. Chapter 3441. The little guy was so immersed in his own world that he didn't notice Uncle Fu entering the room. Uncle Fu looked at him in surprise. "Xiao Bao, why are you up so early today? You don't even need me to wake you up." Xiao Bao turned around in shock. Seeing that it was Uncle Fu, he rushed into Uncle Fu's room. "Uncle Fu. Bad news. Bad news." Uncle Fu was startled by the little guy's shouting. He hugged him and quickly asked, "What's wrong? What's bad news?" "Sob, sob, sob, sob." Xiao Bao said tearfully, "Bad news? Mommy seems to have been targeted by a big bad guy." "What? Big bad guy?" When Fu Bo heard this, he was completely confused. He didn't know what he meant. Xiao Bao said angrily, "Mommy went out last night and didn't come home until late at night. Once she got home, she called a man. That man seemed very intimate. The point is, when Mommy used to work, many men chased after her. I'm so angry." Uncle Fu was speechless. Chu-ho went out in the middle of the night? Came home very late? Was he on some mission? Early in the morning, he heard that a few triad leaders had been arrested. Could it be that he was on a mission last night? Uncle Fu, what should we do? Xiao Bao was still immersed in his own world of despair. He tugged at the corner of his shirt and cried, "What if Mommy gets chased away by other men?" "No, Xiao Bao, don't cry. No, I want to find Daddy." Xiao Bao pushed Uncle Fu away and ran upstairs. Uncle Fu saw this and immediately chased after him in fear. "Oh, Xiao Bao, Master is still sleeping?" He chased Xiao Bao all the way upstairs and saw Xiao Bao rushing into Gu Jinglian's bedroom. He pushed the door open and barged in. When Uncle Fu saw this, his heart nearly jumped out of his chest. Could it be that this fellow had not experienced his master's terrible temper when he woke up? The old master had slept very late last night. As a result, he was disturbed by this child early in the morning. He would definitely be angry. Uncle Fu immediately rushed into the room, only to see Xiao Bao walking into the bedroom. He climbed onto Gu Jinglian's bed with his hands and feet and threw himself onto a certain sickly devil who was sleeping. Dad, wake up. Something bad has happened." Xiao Bao held Gu Jinglian's face and shouted into his ear. She slapped his face with her little hands to force him to wake up. Gu Jinglian had been sleeping soundly, but Xiao Bao's high-pitched voice woke him up. "Don't, my little ancestor." Uncle Fu, who was behind him, was so frightened that his legs almost turned to jelly. He was about to go forward to stop him when he saw that Gu Jinglian was still frowning and did not open his eyes. Xiao Bao grabbed Gu Jinglian's collar again and shook him forcefully. "Dad, wake up. Something bad has happened." Uncle Fu rushed to the bed anxiously. He was about to carry Xiao Bao away when his hands touched Xiao Bao's body. However, he saw a certain devil slowly sit up on the bed. Uncle Fu was speechless. It was over. The devil said, "Who allowed you to enter my room?" Gu Jinglian lowered his head. His slightly messy fringe covered his eyes. Although his voice was not loud, it was very deep and rich, containing a certain kind of heart-palpitating warmth. Chapter 34-42. Gu Jinglian raised his head and opened his eyes. Because he was not fully awake, his eyes were bloodshot. At first glance he looked like a demon king, scarlet red. It was as if a storm of blood was brewing in the depths of his eyes. "Who told you to disturb my sleep?" He opened his mouth again and questioned coldly. Uncle Fu was so frightened that his teeth chattered. Xiao Bao did not seem to be afraid of him and cried, "Dad! Last night, Mom seemed to have gone out on a date with another man and came back very late. What should we do? What if Mom gets chased away by another man?" "Dad, why are you not like a man at all? Mom is about to be kidnapped and you're still in the mood to sleep in bed. If Mommy finds me a stepfather and you find me a stepmother, Xiao Bao won't be able to live anymore. I don't care. Dad, you have to win Mom's heart within a month. Otherwise, whoa, Xiao Bao will jump down from the second floor and end it all." Gu Jinglian's scalp went numb from his howling. He frowned and gritted his teeth. "Shut up. Don't be noisy." "Dad, do you really not like Mom? It's okay if you don't like her. You can win her heart first and then slowly develop feelings for her. If you don't say anything, I'll take it as a yes." Gu Jinglian did not listen to anything he said. His thoughts were still very muddled and his eyelids were so sleepy that he could not open them. Xiao Bao was still yelling in his ear, but he could not hear what this guy was yelling about. He was a little impatient. Whatever. Let him wake up first. With that, he fell back onto the bed with a thud. Uncle Fu was surprised. Master did not kick Xiao Bao off the bed unexpectedly. For some reason, his temper seemed to have been restrained. Could it be, Uncle Fu? Dad agreed. Xiao Bao clapped his hands happily. The corner of Uncle Fu's lips twitched as black lines appeared on his face. "Which ear of yours heard Master agree? A verbal promise doesn't count." Xiao Bao suddenly ran out of the bedroom and walked to the water table. He picked up a brush and scribbled a line of words on a piece of paper. Then he dipped the brush in ink and walked to the bed. He grabbed Gu Jinglian's hand and dipped the brush in ink onto his thumb. Then he made a mark on the paper. It seemed that Xiao Bao was finally relieved and skipped out of the room. Uncle Fu sighed and quickly chased after her, closing the door behind him. 2 hours later, the Demon King finally woke up. He sat up on the bed and held his aching forehead. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a piece of paper floating on the bed. He picked it up and looked at it. "Papa. Get the horse girl in 1 month's time." "What I can't do, Daddy? Sure, big dumb pig." The words were misspelled and the handwriting was a mess. It was simply scribbling. Gu Jinglian finally understood it. Daddy promised to get Mommy in 1 month. If he couldn't do it, Daddy would be a big dumb pig. The great demon king was dumbfounded. What was going on? There was a fingerprint on it. It looked like. Gu Jinglian compared it seriously. It was actually his. When did he make a mark? He did not even know. Also, when did he agree to such a thing? It was simply ridiculous. He did not even need to think about whose handwriting this was. Chapter 34-43. Uncle Fu walked in and saw Gu Jinglian holding a piece of paper. He was so angry that his face was ashen. He walked in and took a look. When he saw what Xiao Bao had written, he couldn't help but chuckle. This guy is too. Before he could say the words capable, Gu Jinglian turned his eyes and glanced at Uncle Fu. The latter immediately shut his mouth tightly. Old Master's gaze was too scary. It almost strangled him. Gu Jinglian held the piece of paper and asked Uncle Fu, "When did he write this?" "Probably in the morning. I remember that Xiao Bao did write something on the paper and even asked you to mark it." After he said this, Gu Jinglian finally remembered. Early in the morning, there was indeed a voice that bombarded his ears. He was a light sleeper. It was a habit of many years. Even when he was sleeping, he was alert. Unless he was especially tired, he wouldn't sleep so soundly. Moreover, he didn't guard against Xiao Bao at all. Hence, he was only focused on sleeping at that time and didn't hear what the little guy was shouting about. Now that he thought about it, Gu Jinglian was speechless. This guy. Just as he was gnashing his teeth, Uncle Fu kindly advised, "Old Master, why don't you fulfill Xiao Bao's wish? Marry Chu Ho. This way Xiao Bao will be relieved of one of his worries." It would also be relieved of one of his worries. Uncle Fu had always hoped that Gu Jinglian would get married and not be alone in the world. He was old and this was the only wish left in his life. Gu Jinglian didn't think much of it. "You know that I don't intend to get married in this life." "Old Master," Uncle Fu sighed and said, "no matter what, even if you don't intend to get married and don't intend to fall in love with any woman, marriage is just a burden on your mind. With you and Chu Ho in this state, it's not very reliable. If marriage is just a formality to you, why don't you complete the formality with Chu Ho? Chu Ho doesn't seem to have any thoughts about marriage. Why don't you just let Xiao Bao have his way?" Gu Jinglian's expression did not change much when he heard this. He turned around and rubbed his forehead. He had slept too late last night, so when he woke up, his head still hurt a little. Uncle Fu said, "Master, why don't you seriously consider my proposal? Marriage was just a piece of paper. It would be good to do it for Xiao Bao. After all, the little guy didn't have a father since he was young. It wasn't easy for him to have a father, so he definitely lacked a sense of security. He hoped that his parents would always be together. This shows how much the little guy cares about you." When Gu Jinglian heard this, he did not know why, but Uncle Fu's words were very pleasant to his ears. Xiao Bao cared about him. When he heard this, the corners of his lips involuntarily curled up slightly. His mood seemed to brighten up a little. At night, when Xiao Bao came back, he immediately ran to Gu Jinglian's study. "Daddy, I'm back." Gu Jinglian had just carried him and sat him on his lap when he heard the little guy ask, "Daddy, can you win Mommy's heart in a month's time?" Gu Jinglian was speechless. His lips twitched. "Why should I win her heart? You promised." Xiao Bao pretended to take out a piece of paper from his pocket. It was actually folded and unfolded. It was exactly the same as the agreement he had seen on the table in the morning. Gu Jinglian was stunned. This guy actually knew how to make 2 copies of the agreement? Chapter 34-44. Because I was afraid that Daddy would go back on his word. That's why I kept a copy. Sometimes this little thing was quite astute. He had indeed thrown that piece of paper into the trash can. He didn't expect this child to be so serious that he even prepared a copy. Xiao Bao patted the paper and pointed at the place where he had stamped, and said, No. Daddy, look, this is your handprint. You stamped it yourself. Don't try to cheat." When did he personally stamp it? It was clearly this sneaky fellow who had secretly stamped it while he was unconscious, okay? This agreement doesn't count. Gu Jinglian reached out to snatch it away, but Xiao Bao was even faster. He carried the paper behind his back and looked at him warily. "Daddy, are you a big stupid pig? You can't even do something like this. You must have been a big stupid pig in your previous life and then reincarnated." He couldn't argue with a child. He couldn't argue with a child. He couldn't argue with a child. As if chanting a spell, Gu Jinglian repeated these words several times in his heart. Only then did he calm down. He pinched Xiao Bao's cheek and said through gritted teeth, "If I'm a big stupid pig, then what about you? A little stupid pig?" If Uncle Fu was here, he would definitely be scared out of his wits. Gu Jinglian was used to being mature and steady. Now, he was seriously debating such a childish question with a child of a few years old. No way. Xiao Bao put his hands on his hips and said arrogantly, I'm a genetic mutation genius. You are indeed a genetic mutation. Daddy is so smart. How can you be so stupid? Xiao Bao heard this and said angrily, how dare you call me stupid? Reflect. Reflect your reflection. Rebound, rebound, rebound. Reflect your reflection, reflect your reflection. Reflect. Xiao Bao's eyes were spinning. Soon he was confused by Gu Jinglian. His little brain could not wrap itself around it. He actually could not tell how many bounces Gu Jinglian had said. The capacity of his little brain was a little insufficient. Xiao Bao pouted and said, anyway, I don't care. Anyway, since Dad promised me something, he must do it. Otherwise, Daddy is a big stupid pig. Xiao Bao wanted to matchmake Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho. In the end, when Chu Ho returned home and was about to finish his meal, Xiao Bao had already taken action. At the dining table, Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho sat opposite each other. Xiao Bao sat in the middle. During the meal, Gu Jinglian did not say a word and ate quietly. It was the same for Chu Ho. Xiao Bao raised his head and looked at Gu Jinglian and then at Chu Ho. Suddenly he reached out his chopsticks, picked up a piece of red braised pork from the plate, and placed it in Chu Ho's bowl. Chu Ho looked up in surprise but heard Xiao Bao say, Dad asked me to give this to you. Dad said that Mom is too skinny and needs to eat more meat to gain more weight. He was definitely up to something. Gu Jinglian narrowed his eyes gloomily. When did he say something like that? Chu Ho looked at the red braised pork in her bowl and then looked at Gu Jinglian in confusion. Was she deaf? She did not hear Gu Jinglian say that either. Looking at Xiao Bao's expression again, Chu Ho suddenly understood. Okay, I got it. Mom, eat more. As she spoke, she took a bite of the red braised pork and began to eat. The awkwardness was instantly resolved. Chapter 34:45. When Xiao Bao heard this, he was so touched that his eyes sparkled. Mommy was eating red braised pork. This meant that, Mommy liked Daddy. Of course, Xiao Bao was only thinking this in his heart. If Chu Ho had heard this, he would have been impressed by Xiao Bao's godly logic. However, Xiao Bao wouldn't let it go just like that. He reached out again and placed another piece of red braised pork into Gu Jinglian's bowl. He smiled and said, Mommy asked me to give this to you. She said that red braised pork is delicious and asked Daddy to eat more. Chu Ho was speechless. When did she say something like that? Gu Jinglian was speechless. She didn't say that. Xiao Bao looked at him with disdain. How did you know? I didn't hear it. Hey Daddy, that's because you and Mommy don't have telepathy yet. Xiao Bao said seriously, Mommy said it in her heart. I heard it. Because Mommy and I have telepathy. Chu Ho resisted the urge to vomit blood and forced a smile. It's delicious. More. Then he lowered his head awkwardly and dug into his rice. Gu Jinglian frowned. He didn't really like red braised pork as it was too greasy. He had always been a light eater. However, just as he was about to put the red braised pork aside, he saw Xiao Bao looking at him with sparkling eyes, as if waiting for his evaluation. Gu Jinglian bit down on the red braised pork. When Xiao Bao saw this, he said cheerfully to Chu Ho, Daddy said that Mommy's red braised pork is the best. Cough. Chu Ho choked on a mouthful of rice and coughed for a long time. Gu Jinglian's expression changed again and again. A mouthful of meat was stuck in his throat and he couldn't spit it out. His face turned green. This guy. When Xiao Bao saw that Chu Ho had choked, he couldn't help but rebuke, Mommy is really too much. Can't you eat slower? No one's fighting with you. As he said this, he scooped a bowl of soup for her and pushed it in front of her. Drink some soup. Chu Ho picked up the bowl awkwardly and carefully drank a few mouthfuls of soup before swallowing the rice. She cleared her throat and picked up the bowl again. When she saw that Gu Jinglian had already silently eaten the red braised pork, she couldn't help but be stunned. She remembered that this man seemed to hate such greasy meat. He had never eaten red braised pork before. Unexpectedly, he had eaten the whole piece. It wasn't easy. Suddenly, Mommy hua, Mommy eat, Mommy eat, Mommy eat. Chu, he looked as if she had seen a ghost. You're sleeping alone? Yes. Little Treasure nodded solemnly and said, because my teacher said that when I grow up, I have to learn to be independent. Mama. He looked so ambitious that Chu Ho didn't want to discourage him, so she nodded and said, sleeping alone is good too. Gu Jinglian glanced at him meaningfully and suddenly had a bad feeling. He had a feeling that this little guy was brewing something in his heart. He couldn't help but suspect the real purpose of his so-called independence. When it was time to sleep, Gu Jinglian's premonition was confirmed. Gu Jinglian had just finished showering and walked to the study when Xiao Bao hooked his finger at him mysteriously. Daddy, come here. He walked to the door and asked curiously as he wiped Mommy's wet hair with a towel, "What's wrong?" Chapter 34:46. As Xiaobao spoke, he took Gu Jingzi's hand and walked towards his room. "Finish writing for me." Gu Jinglian's eyelids suddenly twitched violently. When they reached Xiaobao's room, the little guy pushed him into the study. There were a few invitation cards on the table. He said to him, "You can start writing." As he spoke, he suddenly hugged his favorite toy and pillow in his arms and walked towards the door. Gu Jinglian looked at his back. "Where are you going?" Xiaobao didn't even turn his head as he replied, "Didn't I say?" From today onwards, Xiaobao wants to sleep alone, so Xiaobao wants to sleep in another room. Uncle Fu had already vacated the guest room and laid out the blankets. Gu Jinglian's eyelids twitched even more violently. He said in a low voice, "Wait." However, he heard a bang. Xiaobao had already locked the door from the inside. Before Gu Jinglian could react, he keenly heard a click. It sounded like the door was locked from the outside. His expression froze. He immediately walked to the door and frowned. However, he saw that the door was really locked from the outside. What was he up to now? Why did he lock him in this room? Gu Qingzi. Xiaobao, who was hugging a pillow outside the door, couldn't help but shiver when he heard such a low voice. He felt a little scared. However, on second thought, he had to do this for his mother. Xiaobao clenched his little pink fists and shouted at Gu Jinglian in the room, "Daddy, you'll be sleeping in this room tonight." Didn't Xiaobao say that he wanted to sleep alone? "Mommy is afraid of the dark, so I'll have to trouble you to accompany Mommy." With that, the little guy ran away like a wisp of smoke. What? Separated by a door, Xiaobao's speech was slurred. He spoke too quickly and Chu Yunxing couldn't hear what he said clearly. However, just as Gu Jinglian was wondering what Xiaobao wanted to do, the door of the shower room suddenly opened. He looked in the direction of the voice and saw Chu Ho walking out in a bathrobe. As soon as she walked out, she was shocked to see Gu Jinglian standing at the door. Just now, she was taking a shower and drying her hair. The hairdryer covered the sound outside the door. When she walked out, she saw Gu Jinglian standing at the door, but Xiaobao was nowhere to be seen. Chu Ho asked warily, "Why are you here?" Gu Jinglian calmly turned around and sized her up. Chu Ho was wearing a bathrobe. She had just taken a shower and her entire body was as clean as jade. She was so beautiful that she didn't seem ordinary. She usually combed her hair up, but now that her hair was loose and draped over her shoulders, she looked very feminine. He had never really looked at her seriously before, and only now did he realize that this woman was actually so beautiful. Seeing that he didn't speak, Chu Ho repeated herself, "Why are you here? Say something." Was he mute? Gu Jinglian said, "What do you think?" Chu Ho was even more confused. What did she think? What did she say? How did she know? Since he was already here, he might as well make the best of it. Gu Jinglian sat down on the sofa. This time he roughly knew what Xiaobao was thinking. He wanted to force him to stay in the same room as Chu Ho. This little guy was so young, but he was so scheming that he could even think of such a method. It was really an eye-opener for him. It seemed that he had underestimated him by calling him stupid. This guy was very smart and liked to pretend to be a pig to eat the tiger. Good job, Gu Qingzi. In the guest room, a certain little guy who was spreading the blanket suddenly sneezed. Chapter 34:47. Gu Jinglian sat on the sofa expressionlessly, looking calm and composed. When Chu Ho saw that Xiaobao wasn't in the room, she couldn't help but find it strange. This rascal was still in the room just now. She took a shower first and instructed him to make the bed. Obviously, Chu Ho didn't take Xiaobao's suggestion that he wanted to be independent and sleep alone to heart. Xiaobao was so afraid of the dark. Even if he wanted to sleep alone, he needed someone to coax him to sleep before he left quietly. Sleep alone? He couldn't sleep at all. She had only taken a shower, but where was he now? How could he have disappeared? She asked, "Where's Xiaobao?" Gu Jinglian looked at the door. Chu Ho followed his gaze and looked at the door. She suddenly felt strange and immediately walked over. She reached out to grab the door handle, but the door was locked from the inside. It was actually locked from the outside. She was extremely surprised. She turned around and looked at Gu Jinglian in astonishment, but heard him say calmly, "It's your son's doing." When Chu Ho heard this, she immediately realized what was going on. At the same time she said indignantly, "It's your son too." Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows and didn't say anything. Chu Ho slammed the door and said sternly, "Xiaobao." Outside the door, no one answered for a long time. Xiaobao was no longer outside the door. Chu Ho was a little angry. What was this rascal trying to do? Why did he do that? Why did he lock us in a room? Gu Jinglian looked up at her again. For a moment, his deep, phoenix-like eyes were filled with unfathomable emotions. She could not see clearly or understand what was brewing in his eyes. He suddenly started to seriously consider Xiao Bao's suggestion. Hence, at this moment he was deliberating on how to say it. However, just as he spoke, Chu Ho Yu, the next second he was interrupted by the ringtone of a cell phone. Chu Ho followed the sound and looked at the bed. He saw his phone vibrating and ringing loudly. As she dried her hair, she walked to the bedside and picked up her phone. When she answered the call, the captain's hearty voice came from the other end. Chu Ho, where are you? Come out for supper, we've already made plans. Ah. Chu Ho was confused. Supper? Didn't I tell you after this morning's meeting? Tonight, the anti-mafia team will have supper together. Treat it as a welcome dinner for you. I see. Chu Ho wasn't interested in supper. If it wasn't for an urgent mission, she wouldn't have bothered to go out in the middle of the night. In addition, she was now trapped in her room by Xiao Bao, so it wasn't convenient for her to go out. She said, I can't go out tonight. Thank you for your kind intentions, Captain and Senior. Let's forget about supper. The captain laughed and said, This is a welcome banquet. How can we forget about it? In our group this is a rule. It's not considered especially grand. We'll just have some barbecue and beer together. Then, Chu Ho saw that she couldn't refuse and said plainly, Why don't we change it to tomorrow? I really forgot about this today. I'm sorry. Gu Jinglian saw that her tone was gentle, which was rare. When she was on the phone, her face was no longer stiff. He couldn't help but get up and walk slowly towards her. Chu Ho was still holding her phone. Obviously, she didn't realize that he was slowly approaching her. Okay, there's no hurry. Let's set it for tomorrow then. The captain said. Chapter 34-48. Chu Ho smiled and said, Captain, you should rest early too. Wait, Chu Ho. The person on the other end of the line suddenly called her nervously. Chu Ho raised her eyebrows and said in surprise, What's the matter? Is there anything else? The captain smiled and said, I just wanted to ask you how old you are. Girls your age usually have a boyfriend. Gu Jinglian heard the man's voice and couldn't help but frown unhappily. When Chu Ho heard this, she said disapprovingly, I don't have a partner. You don't have a partner? The man on the other end of the line seemed to be agitated. Just from his tone, it was as if he had heard great news. You're single? Yeah, you can say that. Why are you suddenly asking this? Oh, it's nothing. As a captain, I have to care about my subordinate's marriage. Oh, I see. Chu Ho didn't pay much attention to it. She was especially clueless in this aspect. The man's gaze behind her became even colder. Was this woman an idiot? The man was obviously interested in her. Otherwise, under normal circumstances, no one would ask such a question. His tone sounded quite nervous. He was even inexplicably agitated when he found out that she was single. Did she really not understand or was she playing dumb? After Chu Ho hung up the phone, she turned around and bumped into Gu Jinglian's chest. She furrowed her brows in pain as her forehead bumped into his collarbone. It was quite painful. Chu Ho took a few steps back, only to see Gu Jinglian standing in front of her expressionlessly. He didn't move an inch, but his eyes lingered on her body as if he was trying to figure something out. She asked cautiously, Why do you keep staring at me? Who was that man just now? He asked. Chu He, on the other hand, was stunned. What was wrong with this man today? Did he take the wrong medicine? Why was he suddenly concerned about someone other than her and Xiao Bao? Gu Jinglian's personality had always been indifferent. He never cared about anyone and treated others as air. Does it have anything to do with you? Chu Ho said unhappily, Why are you suddenly concerned about this? What? Can't I ask? Not an important person. Chu Ho saw that Gu Jinglian's eyes were getting colder and colder, so he said, The leader of the anti-mafia group, my direct superior. Anti-mafia group? However, Gu Jinglian felt that it was extremely ironic. Of all the jobs you could do, why did you have to go to the anti-mafia group? Is there a problem? Chu Ho didn't think there was a problem at all. Even if the man standing in front of her was Xiao Bao's biological father, he was also the man that all the members of the anti-mafia group hated. She joined the anti-mafia group because of her identity and past background. She was definitely qualified for this job. Chu Ho preferred to work with men. She couldn't handle the scheming between her female colleagues in the workplace and the schemes between her superiors and subordinates. She would definitely be overwhelmed. In comparison, the work of the police seemed a little rough. However, it was better to deal with these tough men than to work with those calculative white-collar women. Moreover, she was an Interpol officer. She could be considered to be living off her past. Gu Jinglian suddenly pressed her. Then let me ask you. Just now you told him that you're single. How do you explain that? Chapter 34-49. How self-righteous was she to ask? Very good. Gu Jinglian's lips suddenly curled into a smile. His handsome face looked even more devilish under the night light. He said, Chu Ho, let's get married. There was no tone of voice. Rather than a discussion, it was more appropriate to call it an order. Chu Ho doubted her ears. Did she not hear him clearly? She frowned and asked again, What? What did he mean by that? Gu Jinglian said, You heard me clearly, so there's no need for me to repeat myself. Chu Ho was stunned. Gu Jinglian had been thinking about this matter for a long time. These few days Xiao Bao was very anxious about the matter between him and Chu Ho. He did not know how much trouble Xiao Bao would cause if he did not marry Chu Ho. He did not have the patience to drag this matter out. Since Xiao Bao was looking forward to it, he might as well fulfill his wish. Previously, he did not believe in marriage because he was certain that he would never fall in love with any woman in this lifetime. Women were femme fatale. The feud between the Gu family and the Mu family was caused by a woman. Therefore, in his eyes, women were like poppies. They could be touched but could not be tainted. However, Xiao Bao had always hoped that he would marry Chu Ho. Perhaps this was just a child's desire for a sense of security. He was worried that if there was no marriage certificate, then one day his parents would each have a lover and he would feel helpless. Even though Gu Jinglian was certain that such a thing would not happen. However, the little guy did not think so. Then, as a father, if he could not give his son a sense of security, wouldn't he be a failure? That was why he said those words. Chu Ho heard this and felt a little incredulous. I remember that you have expressed your stance before that you do not intend to get married in this lifetime. Why, are you regretting it now? Gu Jinglian said expressionlessly, Since marriage is just a formality to both of us, then since we're getting married and your baby Chu's biological mother, you're the most suitable candidate for marriage. Chu Ho was speechless when she heard this. She said speechlessly, So you really don't take marriage seriously? Gu Jinglian took another step closer to her and said in a low voice, Xiao Bao is forcing me to pursue you within a month. Once he lowered his voice slightly, it became an incomparably mellow voice that was filled with magnetism. For a moment, it bewitched her. He came back to her senses and involuntarily took half a step back. When she finally reacted, she came to a realization. Did he say that? Otherwise, why do you think he spent so much effort to lock us in here? No wonder Xiao Bao had behaved so strangely tonight. First, he tried to curry favor with her, then he threatened to sleep alone and locked her and Gu Jinglian in the same room. So, this was what he had in mind. Chu Ho did not know whether to laugh or cry. What was this? Matchmaking? How could he be so scheming at such a young age? She could not help but wonder if Uncle Fu had been giving him ideas from the beginning to the end. Just as Chu Ho was cursing silently, Gu Jinglian said, When are we going to get the marriage certificate? Chapter 34-50. Marriage is not something that can be settled with just a few words. You sound so casual as if you're buying groceries at the market. Gu Jinglian asked bluntly, When are you going to rest? Are you free tomorrow? No, I have to go to work. Then the day after tomorrow? I'm free in the afternoon. Gu Jinglian said, Then the day after tomorrow. Chu Ho suddenly smiled and continued to dry his hair. Since you said so, then let's meet at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau in the afternoon. She was also very indifferent to marriage. If it were not for Xiao Bao, she would not have bothered with his request. Although she was surprised that this man had taken the initiative to ask, she was not surprised. She realized that Gu Jinglian really doted on Xiao Bao, and it was not the kind that he showed on the surface. A father's love was more profound than a mother's love. Perhaps, for a man like Gu Jinglian, it was very awkward for him to express his love for Xiao Bao. However, even if it was a small matter, he would still unconsciously show his love for Xiao Bao and protect him. He even indulged him. He did not even dare to imagine that if it had been the Gu Jinglian of the past who had been locked in the room alone, he would have definitely flown into a rage. She should be glad that the person who had locked them in the room was Xiao Bao and not anyone else. Even if it had been Uncle Fu, Gu Jinglian would have flown into a rage. She did not know if Xiao Bao was a lucky child. His father's identity was different from that of ordinary people. Gu Jinglian's birth and background meant that Xiao Bao's future was destined to be extraordinary. She did not know if Xiao Bao would be surprised or afraid when he grew up and found out about Gu Jinglian's identity. However, there was a saying that went, "What is it?" When you want to protect the person you love, you have to pick up a weapon. But when you hold a weapon, you cannot hug the person you love. Chu-ho walked to the sofa and said to Gu Jinglian, "It's settled then. The day after tomorrow in the afternoon." The two of them were not people who liked to drag things out. They were not so pretentious about marriage. She would not be like other women who asked for romantic love. She did not ask for two people to love each other in order to be together. Moreover, this was just a matter of form. It was just a process. Gu Jinglian was not surprised by her straightforwardness. This woman was different from ordinary women. She was stubborn and strong, but she did not have the slightest bit of pretentiousness of ordinary girls. This was something that made him feel comfortable. Chu-ho took out a blanket from the wardrobe and walked to the sofa. He spread it out and said to Gu Jinglian without looking back, "I'll have to trouble you to sleep in this room tonight. I'll let you sleep on the bed and I'll sleep on the sofa." Without waiting for Gu Jinglian's response, she lay down on the sofa. The sofa was 2 meters long. She lay down and did not feel restrained. She covered herself with the blanket and got ready to sleep. Gu Jinglian looked at her for a while and then returned to the bed. However, he was not sleepy as he lay on the bed. He turned off the lights and the room was dark. Only the moonlight shone in from outside the window. He sat up and looked at the sofa. He saw Chu-ho wrapped in the blanket and sleeping quietly. She was very quiet when she slept. If not for her light breathing, he would not have felt her presence. He suddenly got out of bed and walked slowly to the side of the sofa. He looked down at Chu-ho's quiet sleeping face. Her beautiful black hair spread out on the pillow like seaweed. Chapter 34:51. It was only when she was asleep that her sharpness was restrained. Gu Jinglian sat down beside her and looked at her casually. Chu-ho was in her dream and did not notice the unusual movements around her. Gu Jinglian was a little stunned. Her vigilance was much lower than before. Or it could be said that she was no longer guarded against him. With her status, she was very vigilant. Even if she was asleep, she would immediately wake up if there was a slight movement around her. It used to be like this. But now, she did not seem to be as wary of him as before. Gu Jinglian could not help but be a little stunned when he realized this. His encounter with this woman was not a coincidence. When he first entered the Gu family, he knew that this woman had a strong background. But at first, he didn't know who she was until she had been by his side for more than a month. According to the investigation report, she was a high-level figure from the Interpol. She was not simple. For a woman to be able to hold the position of anti-crime inspector in such a competitive international police organization, and the highest position at that. This showed that this woman's methods were quite ruthless. It was said that her previous life was a mercenary. This showed that she stood out from thousands of people in the fierce battle. After knowing her identity, he was not in a hurry to expose her. Gu Jinglian occasionally felt that life was boring. With such an interesting woman by his side, he felt a little interested in teasing her. This man was like an elegant cat. After catching his prey, he was not in a hurry to kill it. Instead, he liked to slowly play with it until the prey was tortured to the point where it would be better off dead. Then he would casually swallow the prey into his stomach. He still remembered that night when he drank some wine and came home. He usually did not have a high tolerance for alcohol, but that day he unintentionally drank a little too much and was in a slightly tipsy state. Perhaps it was this state that made her realize that it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So, she wanted to make a move on him. Gu Jinglian was in the room. Chu-ho slowly walked in. He did not see the pistol hidden in the corner of her body, but he caught a glimpse of the cold, murderous intent in her eyes. She wanted to kill him. Chu-ho had received the order from the headquarters a long time ago, but he had not had the opportunity to do so. Gu Jinglian was always heavily guarded, so it was hard for her to find an opportunity to strike. However, that night was a golden opportunity. Gu Jinglian saw the murderous intent in her eyes but did not point it out. Instead he said to her, "Red Lotus, come here." She slowly walked towards him, and he suddenly realized that at this time she must be touching her gun. Interesting. Did she really think that he would lose his alertness just because he drank a little too much? Or did she conceitedly think that without the protection of those bodyguards and death guards, she would definitely succeed with just the two of them? Gu Jinglian suddenly sat up, grabbed her arm and pulled her into his arms. Chu-ho was taken aback. He had never expected that he would suddenly make such a move. At that time, Gu Jinglian did not have countless women around him, but he never had a repeat of them. He only had a biological need, but he wasn't aroused. However, at the very least he had never acted intimately with her. Chapter 34:52. He suddenly pulled her into his arms. She was so shocked that she forgot what she wanted to do. The world spun before her eyes and she was pinned down on the sofa by him. Gu Jinglian whispered into her ear. His devilish voice was laced with a hint of laziness that was tainted by alcohol. He said to her, "Don't try any tricks." This was a piece of advice and a warning. Chuho's eyes widened. Before she could say anything, her mouth was covered by his. The sudden kiss caused her entire mind to go blank. In her entire life she had never hugged a man so intimately, let alone kissing him. His warm breath blew against the corner of her mouth. His frivolity caused her to fly into a rage out of humiliation and she resisted. However, He had underestimated Gu Jinglian's combat prowess. She was still no match for him. Even though Gu Jinglian had many bodyguards around him, it didn't mean that he didn't have any skills. On the contrary, none of his bodyguards were a match for him. Rather than calling them bodyguards, they were more like scapegoats. If they were attacked, these bodyguards would become his human sandbags and take the bullet for him. This was a heartless and cold man. Soon she was restrained by him. Her hands were tied behind her back. Even if he didn't use handcuffs or ropes, she couldn't move at all. Chuho stared at him in fear. She thought that her actions had been discovered. However, the next second, Gu Jinglian bent down again and kissed her. What happened next almost caused her entire world to collapse. She was no match for him at all, so she let this man do whatever he wanted. When she woke up in the morning, the soreness all over her body reminded her that what had happened last night wasn't a dream. She didn't know how she left. She put on her clothes in a sorry state and fled the room. However, she didn't know if Gu Jinglian did it on purpose or if he really didn't remember what had happened that night. He didn't seem to mention it either. She thought that he must have been so drunk that he forgot everything that he had done and said. But what she didn't expect was that he was still very conscious and remembered everything clearly. Chuho was completely clueless in this aspect. As a result, she did not take any protective measures after the incident. As a result, when the Gu family issued the order to purge her, she did not know that she was already pregnant with his flesh and blood. This was also a surprise to Gu Jinglian. It wasn't that he couldn't control himself that night. It wasn't because he was careless. Instead, he knew very well that this woman wanted to kill him, so he couldn't let her live. Did he have feelings for her? It was simply a fantasy. However, 5 years later, he did not expect that she would be reborn as the birth mother of his son. She bore him a son. This was something that he had not expected. Gu Jinglian was initially very repulsed by Xiao Bao's appearance. He had never thought that he would have a son in this life. He was very resistant to the sudden appearance of his son, his flesh and blood. However, the moment this noisy little fellow appeared in his line of sight, his originally cold and lonely world was stirred up into a state of chaos. His originally ice-cold heart was gradually warming up. Chapter 34:53. Gradually he acknowledged Xiao Bao's identity and the fact that Xiao Bao was his son. Gradually Xiao Bao no longer held any animosity towards Chuho. No one was born cold and indifferent. However, because of his environment he had a cold and indifferent personality. Gu Jinglian did not shy away from the fact that he was a cruel and merciless man. He also did not deny that in many people's eyes, he had the image of a demon king. However, in his eyes, what was scarier than evil was hypocritical justice. Human nature was selfish. Perhaps people were born pure and untainted, but as they grew up, there was no such thing as a pure and untainted person. It was just that his evil was purer and more undisguised. Xiao Bao did not sleep well the entire night. He clung on to Uncle Fu to sleep with him. Even though Uncle Fu was asleep beside him, his imagination was still running wild. He wondered how Daddy and Mommy were doing. Since they were locked in the same room, there should be some progress in their relationship, right? He did not remember which subordinate had suggested this lousy idea to him. It was said that regardless of whether it was a saint or an evil person, as long as they were normal men and women lying on the same bed, there would be a wonderful chemical reaction. Xiao Bao's understanding of this sentence was that if they slept on the same bed, their relationship would become better. The little guy did not know anything about love. He was only connecting himself and Chuho. Every time he slept with Mommy he felt especially safe. If he let Daddy and Mommy sleep together, perhaps he would also feel this sense of security. It would be best if Mommy could rely on Daddy and Daddy could rely on Mommy. This way he would be able to fulfill his wish. Just like that he muddle-headed until morning. Even though Xiao Bao did not sleep well when he thought of Gu Jinglian and Chuho, he felt energized and nimbly got out of bed. He rushed to the room, unlocked the door and walked in. However, he saw Chuho sleeping on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket and still not awake. Xiao Bao was instantly dumbfounded. When he looked at the bed again he saw Gu Jinglian lying on the bed. When he heard the door open, he immediately woke up and sat up from the bed, looking at him coldly. "Good morning, Daddy." He greeted him awkwardly. Just as he was about to ask why one of them was sleeping on the sofa and the other on the bed, he caught a glimpse of Gu Jinglian's dangerous gaze from the corner of his eye. He immediately became terrified and quickly escaped. During breakfast time, Gu and Chu Ho went downstairs one after another. They saw Xiao Bao was sitting at the dining table looking aggrieved. He watched as they walked into the dining room and sat down next to him. He was fuming mad when he thought he saw the scene when he opened the door that morning had rushed was his furious thought. This father of hers was a little too disappointing. Had wasted all his efforts, had wasted his efforts. In the end it was a waste. When he thought of this, he did not even have the appetite to eat breakfast. When Chu Ho saw that his cheeks were puffed up with anger, he resisted the urge to teach him a lesson and exchanged glances with Gu Jinglian. Gu Jinglian's anger had also subsided. He took into account that he was still young and did not argue with him. Besides, Xiao Bao did not have any bad intentions when he did this. He seemed to be very indulgent towards this son of his. Gu Jinglian suddenly forked 2 slices of ham onto his plate and said in a low voice, "Your mommy wants you to eat more meat." It was just a simple sentence, but it made Xiao Bao feel happy all of a sudden. Chapter 34:54. Baby Chu picked up his knife and fork and stuffed the ham into his mouth clumsily. He ate with relish. After he finished eating, he looked at Chu He with a pair of longing eyes. Chu Ho did not want to disappoint him, so she poured him a glass of milk and pushed it in front of him. "Your dad said to drink more milk to replenish your calcium, so you can grow taller." Wow, that was great. He did not expect the relationship between the two of them to improve so quickly. In just one night, Dad and Mom had become so close to each other. Xiao Bao suddenly felt that the previous night's action was definitely the wisest decision he had ever made. He held the glass of milk and took a big gulp. His heart was filled with sweetness. He felt that there was finally hope for what he had been looking forward to. After Chu Ho sent Xiao Bao to school, she went to the police station. Her outstanding performance that night had allowed her to become an official member in advance. In the morning she went through the procedures. At noon she took her lunch and sat down. The captain and a few members of the anti-gang team walked into the cafeteria. "Captain, Chu Ho is over there." A man tugged at the captain's sleeve and whispered. The anti-gang team members had been colleagues for many years. After working together for so many years, they had developed a deep rapport. How could they not know what the captain was thinking about Chu Ho? Their captain had fallen in love with this young lady. However, everyone liked Chu Ho. From the initial prejudice to the sudden rise in fame, everyone was convinced of Chu Ho's abilities and did not look down on her. The captain, Li Xiaofeng, was in his 30s. He had been in the anti-gang team for many years and was considered a veteran. As he had been a detective for many years, he did not have the time to be in a relationship. His family had been urging him for many years, but he had never taken it to heart. Firstly, he had been in this job for a long time, so he was more straightforward. He had been in a relationship before, and his girlfriend happened to be the type who was not easy to deal with. To put it bluntly, it was a little pretentious. This love affair had exhausted him completely. His girlfriend especially loved to pester him. Sometimes, when he was working overtime or carrying out a mission and came home late, she would throw a tantrum at him without any understanding. This relationship had ended long ago. Therefore, he was actually a little afraid of women. However, Chu Ho was different. As for what kind of special feeling it was, he was not very cultured and could not describe it. However, he liked her straightforward personality. Li Xiaofeng and a few colleagues took their food and sat down beside Chu Ho. When Chu Ho saw him, she smiled and greeted him, "Captain." "Captain? What? We're colleagues, you can call me Xiaofeng like the others." Chu He was stunned. "But I heard the others call you Captain." Li Xiaofeng felt. "Chu, you're different. You're the flower of our anti-mafia group, so you have this privilege. We can't call the captain by his name. You have the right to do that." "You? Do you know how envious the other teams are of us? In the past, they said that the anti-gang team was a bunch of old bachelors. Look, now there's a new one. Of course, we have to give you special privileges." Chu Ho was speechless. "All right, how about this?" Chapter 34:55. "Of course, no problem." Li Xiaofeng approved her leave without hesitation. "Oh yeah, Chu Ho, don't forget tonight. We've made an appointment. The anti-mafia team is going to hold a welcome dinner for you. Our budget is limited, so we can't afford to go to a high-class hotel. Let's just drink some beer at the barbecue stall and get to know each other better." Chu Ho nodded. Okay." She was almost done eating, so she said goodbye to the few of them. She stood up, emptied her plate into the recycling bin and left. Li Xiaofeng was still looking at her back view with infatuation. His gaze was fixed on her, but he couldn't take it away. A young police officer stretched out his hand and waved in front of Li Xiaofeng. Li Xiaofeng finally retracted his gaze and looked at him. What are you doing? We want to ask you what you're doing. You keep staring at her as if your eyes can't see through her. That's right, Captain. Look at your eyes staring at her. Why don't you chase after her? Captain, you're obviously in love. How is it? Isn't the taste of love sweet? Get lost. Li Xiaofeng scolded. What nonsense are you talking about? Oh, you're still trying to cover for her? We can all see that you've taken a fancy to her. The others started to jeer. People can lie, but their eyes can't lie. Every time Chu Ho appears, you look like you've lost your soul. Even if we're blind, we can't not see that. Li Xiaofeng blushed instantly. He used his chopsticks to smash his Japanese rice, but he was too embarrassed to say anything. Go after her if you like her. Go after her, what are you hesitating for? That's right. If you're late, she might become someone else's woman. Does Chu Ho have a girlfriend? Someone suddenly asked. Li Xiaofeng immediately said, No. Captain, did you ask her? I asked around yesterday. She said she's single. Wow. Captain, you're really fast. We were worried about you. That's right. Captain, you're an old bachelor. We're worried that you don't know how to woo a woman. Li Xiaofeng said unhappily, You guys just don't drag me down. You don't do proper work all day long, but you're blindly interested in things that have nothing to do with work. How is this blind enthusiasm? That's right. This is an important matter that concerns our captain's life. How can it be called blind enthusiasm? She's so pretty and powerful. She might not even like us, Li Xiaofeng said with some loneliness. I'm just afraid that she won't like me. It's useless even if you work hard. Chasing a woman, what do you mean? If he didn't need to chase after her, what was the point of chasing after her? Captain, you don't have to worry about this. Just focus on chasing after him. We are all your strongest supporters. Li Xiaofeng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. All right. Hurry up and eat. In fact, it was no secret that Li Xiaofeng was interested in Chu Ho. Other than Chu Ho, the entire anti-mafia team was well aware of it. However, Chu Ho was a taciturn person. She was especially clueless in this aspect. Hence, she only treated Li Xiaofeng's excessive concern for her as a senior's enthusiasm for a junior. Before she got off work that night, Li Xiaofeng specially reminded her of the activities that night. Chu Ho repeatedly said, I'll take it to heart. Chapter 3456. Perhaps he had been enlightened by the invitation card not long ago, but Xiao Bao's talent and craftsmanship was slowly being revealed. Just as he finished, Uncle Fu came to call them for dinner. Chu Ho had just accompanied Xiao Bao downstairs and sat down opposite Gu Jinglian when she suddenly remembered something and put down her chopsticks. Xiao Bao saw this and was puzzled. He asked, Mom, why did you put down your chopsticks? I'm not eating. I have an event at 8 o'clock. As Chu Ho spoke, she raised her hand to look at her watch. It was getting late and they should get ready to leave. Gu Jinglian looked up when he heard this. He seemed to remember that a man had called to ask her out last night. Even though he vaguely knew that it was about this, he pretended to ask casually, What event? A colleague is treating us to a meal. He said it's a welcome dinner. As Chu Ho spoke, she patted Xiao Bao's head and said, It's almost 8 o'clock. Mom is getting ready to leave. I might be back late tonight, so you should sleep early tonight. You don't have to wait for Mom. Before Xiao Bao could say anything, he saw Chu Ho stand up and say a few words to Uncle Fu before she took her bag and left. She completely ignored Gu Jinglian and did not even greet him. Gu Jinglian was feeling depressed when he suddenly felt a little hoof stomp on his foot. He frowned and looked at Xiao Bao, only to see him glaring at him with an exasperated expression. Dad, you're such a big idiot. You're such a big idiot. Gu Jinglian's expression darkened and he almost lost his temper. Why are you throwing a tantrum at me? Mom must have gone on a date with the other uncles. Xiao Bao was eager to see the world burn. He did not realize that his words were undoubtedly fanning the flames. Dad, why aren't you stopping her? If the other uncles really catch up with her, we'll see how you cry while hugging your blanket. When Uncle Fu heard this, he could not help but smile coldly. Just imagining Gu Jinglian hugging his blanket and crying made him very amused. Gu Jinglian's face immediately turned ashen. Who's hugging the blanket and crying? In short, Dad is too useless. I've helped you so much. If you still can't get your mother, you'll be even stupider than a big black pig. Gu Jinglian, He clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. What to do? She really wanted to punch him. Stinky brat. Uncle Fu quickly tried to smooth things over. Xiaobao, don't worry about it. Let me tell you some good news, okay? When Xiaobao heard this, he couldn't lift his spirits. He was only worried about his mother running away with another man, so he wasn't interested in the good news that Uncle Fu mentioned. What? You don't want to hear it? I'm sure you'll be happy to hear that. Xiaobao had lost his appetite. He held his little head and muttered listlessly, Is there anything happier than Dad and Mom getting married? Yeah, your dad and mom are going to get their marriage certificate tomorrow. Xiaobao didn't understand what he meant. Get their marriage certificate? What certificate? As if he understood his confusion, Uncle Fu knocked his little head. Of course they're getting married, you little fool. Married? Just as he said the word, Xiaobao suddenly reacted. His eyes widened as if there were countless little stars twinkling in them. What? Really? Married? Dad and Mom are really getting married? Yeah, tomorrow. Uncle Fu was also infected by Xiaobao's cheerful mood and smiled. Xiaobao was so happy that he instantly jumped 3 feet high and almost fell off the stool. Chapter 34:57. Uncle Fu was worried that he would fall, but the next second he saw him jumping up and down happily on the spot. Then he threw himself into Gu Jinglian's arms, hugged his neck and kissed him. Daddy is awesome. Gu Jinglian's face darkened. He had just been scolded by this guy as a big stupid pig, and now he was jumping up and down with him in his arms. This kid's face was really like the weather in June, changing so quickly. He was disgusted. Daddy, is this true? It's not a lie. Xiaobao still didn't believe him and asked again. Yeah. Xiaobao was ecstatic when he heard this. He held his father's face and pouted, wanting to kiss him again. Gu Jinglian pushed him away in disdain. Be good and eat. Xiaobao immediately stood at attention and saluted. Yes, sir. He immediately climbed onto the table, held the bowl, and obediently ate the rice. Xiaobao's mood was instantly lifted. Regarding Gu Jinglian's words, he naturally treated them like an imperial edict. Gu Jinglian watched him eat obediently, and the dark clouds on his face slowly dissipated. When Chu Ho arrived at the barbecue restaurant, Li Xiaofeng and a few colleagues were already there. The group of people had booked 2 big round tables and it was very lively. Seeing that she had arrived, everyone was excited. Just as she sat down, a few colleagues said, Chu Ho, you're late. Shouldn't you drink as a punishment? Okay, I'll drink as a punishment. Chu Ho came quickly and was not shy. Ehehe. The group of people covered their mouths and snickered. The plan was like this. They would work together to get Chu Ho drunk. Then their dear captain would have a reason to save the damsel in distress and drink for Chu Ho. When it was over, he would have a chance to send Chu Ho home with the excuse of escorting the damsel in distress. In the middle of the night, a single man and a single woman, coupled with alcohol, was simply firewood paired with fire. Chu Ho happily downed a glass of beer. Everyone cheered and the scene became even more lively. Chu Ho, ignore them. Don't be fooled by how serious they look when they're working. In private they're all crazy. Chu Ho smiled and said, Yeah, I can tell that she's very cheerful. Captain, let's make a move first. Cheers to Chu Ho. A few people filled their glasses with beer and toasted Chu Ho again. Chu Ho did not refuse and downed another glass. His straightforward action stunned everyone. Wasn't this drinking too satisfying? So heroic. They were a little stunned. He drank a few glasses of wine to warm up the mood. Under the influence of alcohol, the group of people spoke with fervor and assurance in their rough voices. Chu Ho, on the other hand, did not speak much. She was more taciturn. Even though she had drunk a few glasses of wine, she did not have much enthusiasm. Sigh. Just thinking about it makes me angry. One of the colleagues suddenly complained, I met with a troublesome matter today. Tell me about it. Look, we, the anti-mafia team, are usually not well liked by the public. In our line of work, we risk our lives and I have no complaints. But today we met a few people from the narcotics squad. Guess what they said? They said, your anti-mafia team is just a freeloader. So many people are just decorations. When I heard that, I almost got into a fight with them. The anti-mafia team's police officers were all hot-blooded men. When they heard that, they could not take it anymore. Oh, why did they say that? We usually risk our lives when we carry out missions. What did they mean by that? Just because they're so great in the narcotics squad, we're just a freeloader? Chapter 34:58. The colleague downed another glass of beer, obviously furious. They said that no matter how capable you are, can you bring down the Gu family? What's the use of sweeping those small fries? If you have the ability, arrest Gu Jinglian. Chu Ho's back suddenly froze. She looked up at the colleague only to see his face flushed red. He looked angry as if he was enduring a great humiliation. What do I think after hearing that? Tell me, the Gu family? Is that something we can touch? Even if we want to, the higher-ups won't agree. This Gu family has a powerful background. The group of people felt unhappy when they mentioned this matter. The Gu family had been entrenched in Beijing for decades and had great power. The anti-mafia team was unwilling to mention the name Gu Jinglian. In their eyes, Gu Jinglian was a powerful and awe-inspiring existence. As the anti-mafia team, their goal was to wipe out all mafia organizations. However, they had encountered such a huge family with a deep-rooted status. They did not dare to touch a small branch of the Gu family. Speaking of which, it was not that they did not dare to, but that they did not have the right. Every time they carried out a mission, it was the higher-ups who gave the order. They were only responsible for carrying it out. The Gu family was arrogant and they could not do anything to them. Let's not talk about these depressing things. Li Xiaofeng was also a little unhappy. He had not been willing to talk about this matter. In his heart, the name Gu Jinglian was detestable, but the most hateful thing was that he could not do anything to this person. As the team leader, he had been sullen for a long time. This name, under normal circumstances, could not be mentioned at all. This colleague had been humiliated, and with the help of alcohol, he spilled the beans. The few of them drank sullenly. It was obvious that because of this matter, their willpower had also become much lower. Chu Ho took a sip of her beer thoughtfully. However, she saw Li Xiaofeng look up at her, as if he was deliberately changing the topic. He asked curiously, "Chu Ho, you said that you were taking leave tomorrow afternoon. What's the matter?" Chu Ho put down his wine glass and did not intend to hide this matter. He said calmly, "We're going to get our marriage certificate tomorrow." As soon as he finished speaking, the group of people was stunned. What? Get married? What certificate? Li Xiaofeng almost lost his grip on the wine glass in his hand and dropped it on the table. Chu Ho, don't tell me you're referring to a marriage certificate? Yes. The crowd was in an uproar. Someone immediately said, "Didn't Captain say that you're single? Why did you say you want to get a marriage certificate?" That's right, Chu Ho. This is your fault. You're making a false report. Chu Ho, aren't you single? Chu Ho smiled. It's counted now, but from tomorrow onwards, it probably won't be counted anymore. Probably? The crowd was confused again. What do you mean? One moment you're single and the next moment you're getting married. Who is your marriage partner? Is it a blind date or a flash marriage? Li Xiaofeng said suspiciously, "Chu Ho, are you joking with us? What's there to joke about? Tomorrow I'll be back after getting my marriage certificate." As the Civil Affairs Bureau was open from Monday to Friday and was off on Saturdays and weekends, he had no choice but to take leave. Chapter 3459. It's a long story. Chu Ho curled her lips. Sometimes marriage and dating don't have much to do with each other, right? What she meant was, don't ask about it. I don't want to talk about it. When she said that, the crowd didn't know how to ask about it. When Li Xiaofeng heard that, he felt extremely disappointed. Everyone looked at him with heartache. For a moment, he didn't know how to break the awkwardness, so he downed a glass of beer to vent his frustration. After that, the group of people started to chat about other trivial matters. They wanted to get Chu Ho drunk, so they toasted her one glass after another. Chu Ho didn't refuse any of them, but after a few bottles of beer, her face still didn't move. Those who wanted to get Chu Ho drunk were the ones who got drunk instead. What they didn't know was that Chu Ho had an abnormal tolerance for alcohol. Especially beer. She wouldn't get drunk even after 1,000 glasses. She had only gotten drunk once, and that was when it was Volga with a concentration of 80%. She downed a bottle before she got drunk. Beer was a low-alcohol drink. Other than occupying her stomach, it really couldn't do anything to her. The group of people then knew their place and didn't dare to get her drunk. However, from the beginning to the end, Li Xiaofeng didn't have any interest in exchanging pleasantries. He kept downing beer one glass after another. Before he knew it, there were a lot of empty beer bottles piled up at his feet. Chu Ho just looked at him blankly. She thought that Li Xiaofeng had something on his mind, so he drank to relieve his worries. By the time the dinner ended, Li Xiaofeng was already very drunk. He was sprawled on the table, his face red and his words were incoherent. A colleague paid the bill and came back, but when he saw Li Xiaofeng so drunk, he didn't know what to do. Someone said, "Chu Ho, why don't you send Xiaofeng home?" Chu Ho looked up and raised her eyebrows. She saw the group of people looking at her with sincere eyes. Okay, I got it. Chu Ho stood up and walked to Li Xiaofeng. She patted his shoulder gently and said, Captain, I'll send you home. Li Xiaofeng raised his head and looked at her. His eyes suddenly reddened. Xiao He, Captain, Chu Ho wants to send you home. Can you stand up? Several colleagues came forward to help him up, but they were dragged down by Li Xiaofeng as soon as they went up to help him up, and they fell down. Li Xiaofeng's physique was very strong and sturdy. Of course he wasn't light either. In addition, he was drunk and his body was swaying. The group of people couldn't help him up. He was frowning. Chu Ho suddenly said, Get out of the way. Everyone obediently stepped aside. Chu Ho walked over, squatted down slightly and grabbed Li Xiaofeng by the waist. In an instant he lifted Li Xiaofeng onto his shoulder. He carried it on his shoulder. A woman was carrying a 1.8 tall man on her shoulders. The group of people widened their eyes and sucked in a breath of cold air. Chu He, on the other hand, looked calm and composed. She turned around and said to them, I'll send the captain back first. I'll take my leave first. After that, Chu Ho carried the man away expressionlessly. Even after she had gone far away, the group of people still couldn't react. Wasn't it a little too valiant? What a scary woman. No wonder she could take down so many men alone. Although her arms are thin, they are all muscles. I don't know what she used to do or if she was born with such great strength. Chapter 3460. Chu Ho carried him outside and hailed a taxi. When the driver saw that she was carrying a man, he was shocked. While the driver was still in a daze, Chu Ho carried Li Xiaofeng into the car. As soon as they got into the car, the strong smell of alcohol assaulted their nostrils. The driver frowned and said in disdain, Are you drunk? What if you vomit and dirty the car? Chu Ho waved the plastic bag in her hand and said, I won't dirty your car. Don't worry. The driver was still worried until Chu Ho said, If it gets dirty, I'll pay for the car wash. Only then did the driver feel at ease and press the button on the meter. Along the way, the wind from outside the window blew in and finally woke Li Xiaofeng up a little. He opened his eyes and saw Chu Ho sitting beside him, looking straight ahead. She had the habit of recognizing the road. This was her instinct for many years. Chu Ho lowered her head. Seeing that he had sobered up a little, she immediately asked with concern, Captain, are you feeling better? Let me know if you feel like vomiting. Chu Ho, didn't you say that you're single? What? Burp. Why did you get married just like that? Chu Ho was stunned. She then realized that Li Xiaofeng seemed to be very concerned about this matter. She smiled and said, Is it important who I'm married to? Of course it's important. Li Xiaofeng opened his mouth, and another strong smell of alcohol wafted over. Chu Ho frowned and suddenly said suspiciously, Captain, don't tell me that you like me. She was so straightforward that Li Xiaofeng was stunned for a moment. In his impression, women should be reserved. He didn't expect Chu Ho to be such a straightforward person. No matter what it was, she liked to say it out loud and didn't like to hide it. She was suspicious, so she just asked without any hesitation. Li Xiaofeng didn't know how to answer. Seeing his reaction, Chu Ho could basically confirm that this man liked her. I'm curious as to why you like me. What's so strange about that? With the help of alcohol, Li Xiaofeng mustered up his courage and spoke the truth. The first time I saw you, I felt that you were a special girl. You're pretty, but you want to be an anti-mafia police officer. Most girls are very delicate, but you are brave and tenacious. She's the most special girl I've ever met. When Chu Ho heard this, he smiled. He narrowed his eyes helplessly and said playfully, I'm already a mother. The term girl really doesn't suit me. Mother? Li Xiaofeng blushed. Didn't you say you were single? I don't think being single has anything to do with having children. Chu Ho continued, I have a child and the person I'm about to marry is the child's father. I don't have any feelings for that man. I only married him because I want my child to grow up with a father. That was all she had in mind. Therefore, when Gu Jinglian proposed marriage, she did not think too much about it. Like Gu Jinglian, she also hoped that she could use this method to give Xiaobao the greatest sense of security. So she had a child. Li Xiaofeng was suddenly disappointed. In his eyes, a woman who got pregnant before marriage seemed. She always gave people the feeling that she didn't love herself. She seemed to have read his mind and saw the disappointment in his eyes. She smiled mockingly. Chapter 3461. So, how much of your liking him is real? Liking him at first sight, I don't really understand this kind of feeling. Chu Ho suddenly turned to him and asked, Do you know me? Do you know what kind of person I am and what kind of past I have? Do you like that man? Chu Ho shook her head. I don't like him. Li Xiaofeng was a little confused. Then why did you marry him? You said it's for the child. Wouldn't it be too unfair for you to marry a man you don't like for the sake of the child? Is it worth it? Unfair. Chu Ho said bluntly, I gave birth to the child, so I have to bear the responsibility. Everyone has someone they cherish in their heart. For that person, even if it's a mountain of knives or a sea of fire, I have no regrets. Li Xiaofeng, however, was firm in his stance. He didn't know what he was thinking either. He only said, a marriage without feelings will not lead to happiness. Without feelings, feelings can be cultivated. Chu Ho paused for a moment and said, but there's no second chance for a child's childhood. There's no second chance in life either. Li Xiaofeng maintained his stance. A marriage built on sacrificing one's own happiness is not good for the child. Chu Ho suddenly stopped talking. She just turned her head and squinted her eyes to look at him calmly. After a long time she suddenly asked, don't you have someone you want to protect with everything you have? Li Xiaofeng was stunned and couldn't reply for a long time. Oh, that's a pity. Chu Ho said so and didn't say anything else. People who walked different paths could not make plans together. Li Xiaofeng was different from her. Xiao Bao was her most important family member. Li Xiaofeng lived in the peaceful era. He might have grown up without worrying about food or clothing, successfully completed his university studies, and then graduated with a stable job. But she was different. She was born in a war-torn country. Starvation, war, homeless. She was practically fleeing to a foreign country. In order to survive, she struggled at death's door. Just to stay alive, she had exhausted almost all of her strength. Not to mention living with dignity. He used to be a mercenary and later joined the Interpol. Any child from a normal family would not be willing to serve in a mercenary group for so long. All of this was for survival. And Xiao Bao was the family that God had bestowed upon her after she had survived a calamity. She had no choice, but she was grateful that Xiao Bao had chosen her and become her child. When he was young without a father, Xiao Bao was ostracized and humiliated by many children his age. She knew all of this, but she couldn't get involved with the children. She could only protect Xiao Bao as much as she could. Now Xiao Bao had a father and acknowledged him as his father. In the beginning, it wasn't that she didn't reject Gu Jinglian, but the result of her rejection was that it made Xiao Bao sad. She did not want him to be sad. Moreover, there was nothing wrong with marrying Gu Jinglian. Marriage didn't mean that they had to treat each other with respect like other couples. They could still live their own lives. When needed, they just had to play their roles well. She didn't know if she was doing the right thing, but this was what Xiao Bao wanted. To her, it was the right thing to do. Chapter 3462. Li Xiaofeng didn't say anything after hearing that. He just lowered his head awkwardly, not knowing what to think. The two of them didn't talk during the whole journey. When they arrived at Li Xiaofeng's apartment, the chauffeur said, "We're here." Chu Ho said, "Don't settle the bill yet." Li Xiaofeng saw that they were already at the door. He slowly sat up and fumbled for his wallet to give her the money. Chu Ho said, "It's okay, I'll settle the bill myself." "You sent me back, so I should give you the money? It's okay." Chu Ho said, "Just take it as a bonus for my absence tomorrow." Li Xiaofeng sighed and opened the door to get out of the car. He suddenly realized that he seemed to have said something he shouldn't have. He turned around and said to her guiltily, "I'm sorry, Chu Ho, I seem to have lost my composure today." Chu Ho smiled at him. "It's okay, just that I don't want you to judge someone when you don't know them." After that, she closed the car door and instructed the chauffeur, "Let's go. Please send me to Chuifu Avenue." Just as the car was about to leave, Li Xiaofeng impulsively grabbed the car window and mustered up his courage. "Chu Ho, can't you consider me?" Chu Ho turned around in surprise. Li Xiaofeng said sincerely, "I've thought it through on the way here. Whether you have a child or not, I like you. Liking someone is something that can't be changed easily. If you're willing, I can be a good husband. A good father." Chu Ho looked at him expressionlessly. Then she said calmly, "I'm sorry, I'm not willing." Li Xiaofeng didn't expect her to be so straightforward and reject him without any hesitation. He was a little embarrassed. He smiled weakly and let go of her hand. The car sped off. Just as the car left, his phone rang. Li Xiaofeng picked up the phone and a man's voice sounded from the other end. "Captain, how's the progress?" "Yeah. Did you and Chu Ho get closer? We specially asked Chu Ho to send you back. Did you seize the opportunity?" Li Xiaofeng was speechless. "What progress? There was no progress. In the future, don't come up with any stupid ideas." With that, she hung up the phone angrily. Li Xiaofeng held his throbbing forehead as he thought about how he had lost his composure tonight. He didn't know how to face Chu Ho tomorrow. On the way, Chu Ho's phone rang. It was Gu Jinglian's number. She picked up the phone and Gu Jinglian's cold voice came from the other end. "Why aren't you back yet?" "He's on his way." "Why are you so late?" Chu Ho replied, "A colleague was drunk, so I sent him home." "Send a colleague home?" Gu Jinglian was stunned. For some reason he felt a little uncomfortable. A man or a woman? Chu Ho did not expect him to ask such a question. It was as if he cared a lot about it. Puzzled, she asked, "Is it important whether it's a man or a woman?" Gu Jinglian, "It's a man." Chu Ho replied and then asked, "Is Xiao Bao asleep?" Beep beep beep. Chu Ho, the person on the other end, hung up the phone. She could tell that she had pissed him off. How did she offend him again for no reason? Chu Ho stared speechlessly at the phone that had been hung up and muttered, "Why are you throwing a tantrum again?" Chapter 3463. After Chu Ho returned to the Gu residence, she walked to the main entrance and realized that the door was locked. Why was the door locked? Normally, the Gu residence's main entrance would still be open even when it was very late. Moreover, it was guarded by the Gu family's guards day and night. Now that the door was suddenly locked, Chu Ho was puzzled and knocked on the door. No one opened the door for a long time. She was a little impatient and kicked the door hard. With a loud bang, the door made a loud sound. Then, footsteps could be heard from the other side of the door. Chu Ho crossed her arms and waited for someone to open the door. However, when the person reached the door, he said through the door, "Is it Sister Chu?" All the Gu family's subordinates addressed Chu Ho as Sister Chu. It was not because of anything else, but because when Chu Ho stood there, her aura spread imperceptibly and she was extraordinarily dignified. She was once the top anti-mafia inspector of the Interpol. After many years of accumulation, the aura in her bones was incomparable to that of an ordinary person. Chu Ho said, "It's me. Open the door." "Sorry, I can't open the door for you," the person inside said gloomily. Chu Ho's gaze darkened. "What?" the subordinate said fearfully, "This is Master's order." "What kind of order is this?" He left her alone outside in the middle of the night and didn't even open the door? What was the meaning of this? Did he want her to sleep on the streets? Gu Jinglian, Chu Ho was so angry that she gritted her teeth. What was this man up to again? Chu Ho kicked the door impatiently and ordered coldly, "Open the door." "I can't open it. This is Master's order." Before he could finish speaking, Chu Ho took half a step back and kicked the door open with a loud bang. Chu Ho walked in and saw a few of her subordinates staring at her with fear and disbelief. This door was heavily guarded and very sturdy, but she had kicked it open with one kick. How valiant! "Sister Chu." Chu Ho took a step forward and grabbed one of the men by the collar. He shouted angrily, "Why are you locking the door? Did Gu Jinglian ask you to lock it?" It's Master's order." Chu He let go of him at once and strode upstairs. She walked through the long corridor of District 9 and walked up the stairs to Gu Jinglian's room. She pushed the door open and saw Gu Jinglian sitting on the sofa in his bathrobe in the study. He was looking at a ledger. She did not know how long he had been sitting there. He had a cold expression on his face and did not even turn his head. His cold voice instantly froze the air in the room. "Who let you in?" Chu Ho strode up to him and said angrily, "Gu Jinglian, what's wrong with you?" Gu Jinglian questioned her expressionlessly, "Why did you come back so late?" Chu Ho narrowed her eyes in confusion. She didn't know that he had even set the time for her to return home. "I remember that before I left, I said that I would be back a little late." In other words, she had already reported it to him. He didn't have to be calculative with her for even a minute or a second. Gu Jinglian finally looked up and glanced at her coldly. He said word by word, "I didn't allow you to come home so late." Chu Ho was even more puzzled. "When did you say that?" The man's thin lips spat out two words. "Now." He could have said it earlier. Chapter 3464. It's the middle of the night. Don't be crazy. Chu Ho said, "I'm tired. I'm going back to my room to rest." Just as she turned around, the man's cold voice sounded behind her again. "Xiao Bao is in Uncle Fu's room." Chu Ho snorted coldly. "Then I'll go back to my room." With that, she left the study without looking back. When Chu Ho returned to her room, she realized that the door was locked. She didn't even have to think to know who was behind this. Chu Ho completely lost her patience. Following her memory, she found the key to her room. Just as she opened the door to her room, she was shocked by the scene in front of her. In the huge room, all the furniture had been removed, leaving only a sofa. The bed was also gone. She had only gone to the gathering for dinner, but the room had been emptied. Uncle Fu woke up in the middle of the night and happened to pass by. He saw Chu-ho standing in the room, staring blankly at the empty furnishings. "Chu-ho, you're back?" Chu-ho turned around and looked at Uncle Fu. She said indignantly, "Uncle Fu, can you explain what's going on? Where's my bed?" Uncle Fu came in to take a look and immediately explained, "Your clothes and bed have been moved to the master bedroom." "Master bedroom?" Chu-ho widened her eyes. "Isn't that Gu Jinglian's room?" "Yeah. Xiao Bao said that since you and old master are getting married, then the room will have to be moved too." "Xiao Bao." Chu-ho gritted her teeth angrily. This rascal actually dared to play this game with her. Forget it. At most, she would sleep on the sofa tonight and think of another way tomorrow. When Chu-ho returned to the master bedroom, she saw that Gu Jinglian was still sitting on the sofa. She walked over and questioned, "Were you the one who told Xiao Bao that we were getting married?" Gu Jinglian suddenly stood up and walked in front of her. He sniffed her gently and a cold glint appeared in his eyes. "You smell like someone else." His face was full of disgust. Gu Jinglian had a serious obsession with cleanliness. He was so obsessed with cleanliness that he could clearly distinguish the smell of everyone. Chu-ho frowned. He raised his arm and sniffed, but he couldn't smell anything. Just because she couldn't smell it didn't mean that Gu Jinglian couldn't. For a woman as slow-witted as her, she was so slow-witted that Li Xiaofeng, in order to give her a perfect impression, had dressed up meticulously before leaving the house. He had even sprayed some men's cologne, but she did not notice it. Gu Jinglian could naturally tell that the fragrance on her body came from men's cologne. How close did she have to be to get that damn smell? "Who were you with tonight?" he asked again. Chu-ho frowned and said impatiently, "Why are you so strict about who I'm with?" Gu Jinglian was extremely displeased with her tough attitude and forced her into a corner. "Speak." The biting cold aura on his body quickly filled the air, pressing down on them. Chu-ho took a deep breath and said calmly, "The leader of the anti-mafia team." "Did you hug each other?" "No." "Where did he touch you?" Chu-ho felt like she was being interrogated like a prisoner. She looked up and said impatiently, "He was drunk and couldn't stand up. I carried him to the car." "Carried?" Gu Jinglian's face darkened when he heard this. "Go take a shower and throw your clothes away. Wash up before you go to bed." Chapter 3465. Chu-ho clenched her fists and shouted angrily at his back, "Don't worry, I'll sleep on the sofa tonight. I won't dirty your bed." Gu Jinglian's back paused, but he did not stop walking. "Up to you." With that, the bedroom door slammed shut with a bang. Domineering. Custom-made. Chu-ho cursed in her heart. She took her pajamas from the wardrobe and went into the bathroom. Of course, she couldn't bear to throw her clothes away. She didn't have a lot of clothes. Including her pajamas and work uniform, she only had a total of 5 sets of clothes. There was still a long time before her salary was due, so she didn't have the money to buy clothes. Hence, she threw her clothes into the laundry basket and took a quick shower. She applied some shower gel and was done with it. Chu-ho wasn't as obsessed with cleanliness as Gu Jinglian. Hence, she changed into her pajamas and walked out of the bathroom after her shower. She looked at the bedroom door and saw that it was tightly shut. She couldn't be bothered to find out if he was asleep and lay down on the sofa. Her cell phone in her bag rang. It seemed like there was a message. She took out her cell phone and saw that it was a message from Li Xiaofeng. "Chu-ho, I'm sorry. I had too much to drink today, so I lost my composure. I said a lot of things that I shouldn't have. But I still think that you won't be happy if you marry a man who doesn't have any feelings for you. Stay with me. I'll definitely give you happiness. It doesn't matter if you have a child. I won't care about your past. I can be a good husband and a good father. I just hope that you'll give me a chance. Chu-ho, can't you consider me? I'm serious. All these years, I've never had feelings for any other girl. You gave me a very special feeling the first time I saw you. You're brave and tenacious, but my heart aches for you. Girls are born to be loved by men. You don't have to be so strong. I'll protect you. Are you willing?" This man was really haunting her. Chu-ho frowned and was about to reply, "Sorry, but I'm not willing." However, as soon as she typed the word hug, she felt sleepy and couldn't open her eyes anymore. She actually fell asleep with her phone in her hand. Just as he fell asleep, his hand loosened and the phone fell to the ground. The screen slowly turned off. Early in the morning, the first ray of sunlight shone in. Gu Jinglian's biological clock was very punctual. When the sunlight fell on his body, he woke up. When he turned around, he found that the bedside was empty. This woman really didn't sleep in the room. He was already very angry when he woke up, and when he thought about how this woman would rather sleep on the sofa than in the room, his anger rose to the maximum. Gu Jinglian got out of bed, opened the door and walked out. He saw Chu Ho sprawled on the sofa with his long legs propped on the armrest and his other arm resting on his head. Most of the quilt had slid to the ground. Out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly saw the phone that had fallen on the ground. He walked over and picked it up. Because of his touch, the screen automatically lit up. There were more than 10 unread messages on it. He swiped the screen. The phone did not have a password lock and the first thing he saw was a text message. Chu Ho. Are you asleep? Are you still not willing to give me this chance? Chu Ho, I really like you. Chu Ho, after I got home I thought about it for a long time. My feelings for you will never change. Chapter 3466. He scrolled up and saw the various messages sent by Li Xiaofeng. How did she reply? His fingertips accidentally touched the dialog box, and a word popped up that he hadn't had the time to send. Hug, hug, hug ho. Hug this man. Gu Jinglian was so angry that he clenched his phone tightly. Under his strong grip, there was a crack sound and the screen directly burst into snowflakes. There were a few cracks. The screen of the phone was crushed by his powerful grip. The sudden movement startled Chu Ho. She opened her eyes and felt that she was shrouded in a deep shadow. She blinked and her vision finally regained focus. However, she saw Gu Jinglian's tall figure standing coldly in front of her. He was like a god blocking all the sunlight outside the window. She sat up from the sofa. She was still sleepy and stared at him blankly. What are you? Before she could finish her sentence, she saw that he was holding her phone tightly in his hand. Chu Ho wanted to snatch her phone back, but Gu Jinglian casually threw the phone at her. Gu Jinglian, you, explain. Gu Jinglian was a man of few words, but his face was ashen. His dark face was like a dark cloud hanging over his head. Chu Ho lowered her head to look at the phone screen, but the corner of her eyes suddenly twitched fiercely. Why did the screen crack? Her phone. Just as her fingers touched the phone screen, the screen lit up. After she fell asleep last night, Li Xiaofeng sent her many messages, but she didn't have the time to read them. She didn't have the time to send out the rejection message that she wanted to reply yesterday. Hug. She fell asleep before she could finish this sentence. Therefore, the word hug was especially glaring in Gu Jinglian's eyes. Chu Ho finally understood. Early in the morning, he stood in front of her like a Buddha and inexplicably asked her to explain. Could it be that he wanted to explain these messages and the word hug? She was just about to open her mouth and explain to him, but on second thought, she did not do anything wrong. If she was in a hurry to explain, wouldn't it make it seem like she was hiding something? What's there to explain? In other words, you've already seen it. That's how it is. She didn't say anything. Actually, it was fine. Maintaining her silence was fine. These words undoubtedly added fuel to the fire. When Gu Jinglian heard this, his face darkened even more. After a moment of silence, he suddenly said, "Very good." With that, he turned around and left. Chu Ho muttered, "Ridiculous." Seeing that it was still early, she went back to sleep. Her eyelids had just closed, but before she could fall asleep, she heard the sound of something crashing coming from downstairs. There was the sound of a vase breaking. There was the sound of a cabinet falling to the ground. There was the sound of a chair being kicked away. All kinds of ear-piercing sounds, as well as the terrified screams of the servants, converged into a terrifying symphony. Chu Ho was shocked. He walked out of the door in his slippers and saw Uncle Fu walking toward the stairs with a terrified expression. She and Uncle Fu went downstairs and saw that in just a short 10 minutes, the downstairs was already a mess. Uncle Fu exclaimed, "Ah, this is the enamel passed down from our ancestors during the Qing dynasty." Chu Ho was speechless. Uncle Fu ran downstairs in a panic and picked up the antique enamel that had been mercilessly thrown to the ground by a certain demon king. Fortunately, the floor was covered with an expensive carpet, so it wasn't damaged. He shed tears of relief and gratitude. It's good that it's not damaged. Chapter 3467. Chu Ho stared dumbfounded at Uncle Fu's distressed expression as he hugged the enamel. The corners of his lips twitched violently. He didn't seem surprised that Gu Jinglian had smashed things. Instead, he was more distressed about the priceless antiques that had been smashed to the ground. Did this mean that Gu Jinglian's smashing of things was already normal? Not far away there was another clattering sound. Uncle Fu anxiously instructed the servants, "What are you all still standing there for? All of you are just standing there like idiots. Hurry up and catch it." Yes. A group of servants ran towards the living room in a panic. Catch it? Catch what? What did he mean by that? When Chu Ho arrived at the living room, he was shocked to see Gu Jinglian kick over the shelf used to hold the antique vase. A group of people rushed over dauntlessly and caught the vase with their bodies, holding it in their hands in fear. A certain devil had just lifted the vase when rows of servants fell to their knees with a plop. Their hands were wide open, ready to catch it at any moment. Uncle Fu rushed over with the enamel in his arms. He saw the mess at his feet and the porcelain in Gu Jinglian's hands. He turned pale with fright. Old master, don't. That was used by Emperor Qianlong during the Ming and Qing dynasties. Before he could finish speaking, Gu Jinglian smashed the vase to the ground. Another group of people rushed over and caught the priceless vase in an extremely pathetic manner. Uncle Fu heaved a sigh of relief and walked over to Gu Jinglian with a long face. Old master, what's wrong? Why are you throwing a tantrum so early in the morning? Gu Jinglian didn't even look at him and ignored him. Chu Ho finally couldn't stand it anymore. He walked over, grabbed his sleeve and questioned, What's wrong with you so early in the morning? Gu Jinglian flung her hand away in disgust as if her hand was dirty. His face turned ashen at the thought of this hand cuddling with other men. Chu Ho suppressed her anger and looked to the side. Uncle Fu put his palms together and bowed to her like a bodhisattva. It was as if he was asking her to persuade Gu Jinglian. She endured it for a while before she calmly asked, What exactly do you want? Gu Jinglian turned around. Explain. Explain? Explain what? Chu Ho furrowed her brows. She finally realized that the text messages on her phone had probably angered this man. Didn't I tell you? There's nothing to explain. After a pause, she saw that Gu Jinglian's face had darkened even more. She said angrily, It's not what you think. Gu Jinglian spat out a word, his handsome eyes slightly narrowed. Were you hugging? Chu Ho said patiently, I was too tired when I came back yesterday, so I didn't finish my sentence. I want him back. I'm sorry, I don't want to. In the end, I just typed one word and fell asleep. After she explained, Gu Jinglian's expression softened a little. Seeing that he believed her, she continued, Looking through other people's phones is an infringement of their privacy. It won't be allowed in the future. Fu Bo's heart skipped a beat as he listened. This Chu Ho actually dared to speak to Old Master like that. Not allowed. Old Master was the only one who could say, not allowed to others. No one had ever dared to say, not allowed to Old Master. Gu Jinglian's face darkened when he heard this. He said, Who's looking at your phone? If you didn't look through it, then did my phone run into your hands? Chapter 3468. How infuriating. Chu Ho was going crazy. He had never realized that this guy was so childish. Chu Ho was speechless. Gu Jinglian, you're not a kid anymore. You're not Xiao Bao's age anymore. Why are you smashing things for no reason? Just as the tension was about to break out, a childish voice came from the staircase. What's going on? It's so noisy. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice and saw Xiao Bao walking down the stairs with a furry toy in his arms and rubbing his sleepy eyes. When he opened his eyes, he saw the mess downstairs. He was so shocked that he couldn't stay awake anymore. All the sleepyheads ran away. Ah. Xiao Bao followed the mess and saw Chu Ho and Gu Jinglian standing together. Chu Ho looked angry while Gu Jinglian looked arrogant. He didn't know what was going on and asked fearfully, What's going on? Uncle Fu rolled his eyes and immediately said, It's nothing. Your parents are just playing around. Playing around? Xiao Bao was a little confused. What are they playing? Chu Ho looked at Uncle Fu speechlessly, waiting to see how he would smooth things over. Uncle Fu's mind flashed and he immediately said, Oh, they're playing hide and seek. Hide and seek? Xiao Bao's eyes lit up and he immediately cheered, Xiao Bao wants to play hide and seek too. As he said this, he skipped over to Uncle Fu in his slippers and tugged at the corner of his shirt. Let Xiao Bao play with us. Hide and seek. Hide and seek. Chu Ho was speechless. Uncle Fu was speechless. Gu Jinglian suddenly said, Change your clothes. He looked at him in bewilderment. What do you mean? Go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get your marriage certificate. Gu Jinglian was a man of few words. With just a few words, he expressed his main idea without any hesitation. Chu Ho was stunned when he heard this. By the time he regained his senses, Gu Jinglian was already heading upstairs. She chased after him and asked in confusion, Now? Gu Jinglian said coldly, Now. Didn't you say in the afternoon? She had applied for the afternoon leave, but this man had inexplicably chosen to go in the morning. He was simply doing as he pleased. He didn't care about other people's work at all. Gu Jinglian ignored her. Uncle Fu walked up to her and said, "Go to the Civil Affairs Bureau in the morning. There will be fewer people." Chu Ho turned around speechlessly and looked at him. After a moment of silence, he suddenly said, "Is he always so willful?" She was so capricious that she could call the wind and rain whenever she wanted. Uncle Fu pondered for a moment and nodded helplessly. "That's old master's character. Chu Ho, go with old master to get your marriage certificate in the morning. Otherwise it'll be crowded in the afternoon." Actually, he wanted to say it more to prevent any undue delay. Old master had finally come to his senses and knew that he was going to get married. At this moment he didn't care who the bride was, as long as it was a woman. Moreover, Chu Ho was Xiao Bao's biological mother. A family reunion was the best. However, he didn't dare to say these words in front of Chu Ho. He didn't want Chu Ho to be unhappy when the time came. Uncle Fu had always been scared witless. What kind of character did old master have? Now that he had met Chu Ho, he was so unyielding. He didn't know if the two of them would get along well in the future. Chu Ho sighed and said, "I know. I'll go up and apply for leave." With that, she hurried upstairs. Chapter 3469. Uncle Fu turned around, picked up Xiao Bao and coaxed him, "Uncle Fu will play with you, okay?" After Chu Ho went upstairs, she first greeted Li Xiaofeng and changed the holiday to the morning. Li Xiaofeng naturally agreed very quickly. He didn't mention a word about what happened last night or the text message. Perhaps it was because he had drunk a little too much last night, so he had said some things on impulse. When he woke up and was sober, he kept a tight lid on what happened last night and didn't mention it. Chu Ho was naturally happy to see this happen. By the time she changed her clothes and went downstairs, Uncle Fu had already prepared her household register and ID card. When she saw the household register, Chu Ho was a little surprised. After she had settled down in the Gu household, the household register had become a problem. However, Uncle Fu was a know-it-all. In just a few days he had helped her settle the problem. She came up with an identity and registered it under Uncle Fu's name as Chu Ho. Her identity would be that of a daughter. If it was based on the household register, Uncle Fu would be her father. Marriage registration at the Civil Affairs Bureau required a household register and identification card. Hence, Uncle Fu had already prepared these 4 items in advance. When Gu Jinglian came downstairs, Chu Ho was already waiting for him at the main entrance. The two of them got into the car and Uncle Fu was moved to say goodbye with tears in his eyes. Old master was finally getting married. This was a joyous occasion. When the car arrived at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Chu Ho had just gotten out of the car when she saw couples coming and going in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Her lips twitched uncontrollably. Didn't they say there weren't many people? Why were there so many people? When Gu Jinglian got out of the car and saw so many people, he frowned and looked very unhappy. Because the decision to register for marriage was made suddenly, there was no special communication. Otherwise, they could have gone through the special procedures and processed it directly. But now they could only line up obediently to get a number. Chu Ho rushed to the registration hall and left Gu Jinglian behind. She got a number at the window and turned around to see Gu Jinglian casually walking in. Many young couples were already sitting on the long benches and waiting. Chu Ho noticed that many of the couples were wearing white shirts. For a moment she was a little confused. She then looked at herself. She was wearing an old casual shirt, a pair of trousers and a pair of ordinary sneakers which seemed out of place. The moment Gu Jinglian walked into the hall, his innate domineering aura instantly filled the air in every corner. Everyone looked at him and they were shocked by Gu's handsome looks. Is he a celebrity? Impossible, I've never heard of him. But he's so handsome. Did you notice? Why does he look a little like Gu Xingze? What is this man here for? Don't tell me. Why do all the handsome men in the world belong to someone? I'm really curious who he's getting married to. Immediately after, the crowd saw this godlike perfect man walk in front of a woman who was dressed in rags. Everyone was silent. Why was it this poor-looking woman? It wouldn't be too shabby to call it ragged. It was just that her clothes were a little shabby. Chapter 3470. What about this woman? She was barefaced and dressed in a shabby casual shirt. Most importantly, she was even wearing sneakers. Sneakers? How tacky. She felt that she was standing next to this man. Chu Ho felt as if everyone was looking in her direction. There was disdain, and even hostility. Why were they all looking at her? Gu Jinglian asked expressionlessly, "How long do we have to wait?" "I don't know." Chu Ho glanced at the number plate and then at the window. She realized that the number plate on the window said number 28, and the number she was holding was 65. "We'll probably have to wait another hour." How troublesome. Gu Jinglian walked to an empty seat. Chu Ho also walked over and sat down beside him. Before she could sit down properly, the scrutinizing gazes from all directions became more obvious. For a moment, it felt like a sharp thorn in her back. Look at that woman. She's so poor. Why are the women that handsome men marry always so? It's hard to explain. Actually, this woman is quite pretty. It's just that her dressing is a little unsightly. Don't tell me that pair of sneakers was bought from a roadside stall? I saw that the man was wearing a Patek Philippe watch. I heard that it costs a few million each. It's my first time seeing a real watch. The watch on Gu Jinglian's wrist immediately attracted everyone's attention. Patek Philippe. It can't be a fake, right? It can't be a fake. It's very exquisite. Moreover, this man has a very good temperament. He's either rich or respectable. One look and you can tell that he's a rich man. Then how can he marry this woman? Even if he's poor, he should dress up a little when he comes to get a marriage certificate. He should at least wear a white shirt. Although the discussions were kept very low, they still reached Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho's ears very clearly. Gu Jinglian looked in the direction of the sound and narrowed his eyes dangerously. Those who were secretly discussing immediately turned their heads away in cold sweat, not daring to take another look. The world seemed to have finally quieted down. Gu Jinglian looked back again and sized up Chu Ho's clothes coldly. His handsome brows furrowed slightly. Why are you wearing these clothes? Chu Ho was speechless. I just wear a few clothes. Why didn't you buy clothes? Gu Jinglian said a little unhappily, I remember that Uncle Fu sends money to your account every month. That's your money, why should I use it? Chu, he said coldly, I have my own hands and feet. I can earn money to buy clothes. Why did she want to use his money to buy clothes? Gu Jinglian, this woman was so poor that she only had her backbone left. He suddenly stood up and said to her, get up. Chu, he stared at him blankly. What? To buy clothes to buy. With that he walked towards the door. His tone and tone were especially in line with his autocratic style. He did not seem to have asked for her opinion. Chu, he was flustered. Hey, I don't need to buy any special clothes, right? It's just a marriage certificate. Seeing that Gu Jinglian was walking further and further away, she had no choice but to stand up reluctantly and chase after him. Behind her, a group of people looked at each other, not understanding the situation. What was going on? How could there be a woman who didn't like to shop, dress up, or buy clothes? From the man's tone, he would send money to the woman regularly every month. Could it be, she's not a kept woman, right? Why would a kept woman come here to get a marriage certificate? Chapter 3471. The Civil Affairs Bureau was next to the bustling city center. Gu Jinglian was walking far ahead. Chu Ho finally caught up with him and said unhappily, Gu Jinglian, what are you trying to do? Why was he always changing his mind? Buying clothes. What clothes are you buying? Chu Ho said, is my outfit not good enough? Moreover, we're here to register our marriage today. We can leave after registering. Is there a need to go through so much trouble? The main thing was that there wasn't enough time. She calculated the time. It was 9:30 in the morning. If she came back after shopping at the mall, the Civil Affairs Bureau would be closed and she would have to wait until the afternoon to register her marriage. Going back and forth would waste a lot of time. Gu Jinglian said unhappily, how are you going to take photos in this outfit? He was a typical bachelor. He was a perfectionist who couldn't tolerate even the slightest flaw. At first, he thought that registering their marriage would only require a certificate. However, he found out that they still needed to take photos. There were so many couples who came dressed up beautifully, but she was dressed so casually. He even wore a suit. How could he tolerate her dressing so crudely and taking photos with him? How was her outfit an eyesore to him? Was there a problem? Chu Ho's lips twitched violently. I couldn't tell that you even wanted to register your marriage perfectly. Gu Jinglian ignored her. He walked into a department store on his own. Chu he followed behind him with a frustrated look on her face. Just now, when she walked in, the dazzling decorations and furnishings of the department store almost blinded her. It was too dazzling. She rubbed her eyes subconsciously and saw that Gu Jinglian had walked a long distance again. This guy. His legs were so long that every step he took covered a meter. Couldn't he walk slower? Chu Ho caught up with him, but he suddenly stopped in front of a clothing store. She couldn't stop in time and bumped into his back. She was dizzy from the impact. Go in. Every word that he said was incomparably stingy and precious. If he could express the meaning of a single word, he would not waste a single word more. Chu Ho reluctantly stepped in, and a gust of fragrant wind greeted her. Then she was dazzled by the high-end fashions displayed in the wardrobe. "Hello." The shop assistant came up to her, but before she could exchange greetings she felt a gust of cold wind. She subconsciously looked behind Chu He, only to see a handsome but imposing man walking in. Gu Jinglian's cold and gloomy expression, as well as his incomparably noble posture of a superior, had an astonishing aura. The shop assistant was so scared that he froze on the spot. Gu Jinglian pushed Chu Ho in front of the shop assistant and ordered expressionlessly, "Pick out some clothes for her." "Yes, I'll pick it right away." The shop assistant was so scared that she broke out in a cold sweat. She immediately went to the wardrobe to pick out clothes. Chu Ho looked around and saw that the clothes in this clothing store were exquisite and beautiful, as if they were glowing. Why else would they say that you get what you pay for? Expensive things had their own reasons for being expensive. She pretended to be calm as she walked to the wardrobe and randomly picked out a piece of clothing. She picked up the price tag and glanced at it. Then, she pretended to be calm as she turned around and walked in front of Gu Jinglian. "Gu Jinglian, did you bring enough money?" "Money?" Gu Jinglian said confidently, "I didn't bring any money with me." Chu Ho lowered her voice and questioned, "Why did you come to the mall if you didn't bring any money?" Chapter 3472. I brought my credit card. Credit card? A credit card had a credit limit too. The clothes here were easily worth tens of thousands. Based on his rich and overbearing attitude, would a credit card really be enough for him? She asked doubtfully, "Is your credit card limit enough?" Gu Jinglian frowned and looked at her coldly. He didn't know what was wrong with this woman to doubt whether his credit card limit was enough. It was more than enough to buy the entire shopping mall, let alone a few clothes. Seeing that he was ignoring her, Chu Ho pinched his arm hard. However, she realized that his arm didn't look thick. When she pinched it, it was all firm muscles. She couldn't pinch it at all. It was scary. "Gu Jinglian, don't sell me because you can't afford the clothes." Just as Chu Ho was feeling anxious, the shop assistant walked up to her from behind with a stack of clothes in her hands. She said respectfully, "Miss, please come to the fitting room to try on the clothes." "Gu Jinglian, why did you pick so many clothes?" She hated trying on clothes the most. It was so troublesome to take off her clothes and put them on again. Chu Ho braced herself and went into the fitting room. Gu Jinglian sat outside and waited. However, she didn't see her come out even after half an hour. The shop assistants looked at each other. Gu Jinglian was also suspicious. He walked to the door of the fitting room and kicked it. "Is she dead in there?" Everyone was stunned when they heard this. Who was this man to this woman? At first they thought that they were a couple. However, seeing him kick the door so violently and speak so fiercely, they didn't seem like a couple. It seemed like he was here to collect a debt. Chu Ho's angry voice could be heard from the fitting room. "What are you rushing me for? Shut up." Many of the clothes were skirts. Just zipping them took a lot of effort. Gu Jinglian finally lost his patience. He pushed the door open and was about to go in when Chu Ho immediately blocked the door. She said angrily, "What are you doing? Come out." "I'm not done putting on my clothes." Gu Jinglian said impatiently, "I'll give you 10 seconds. After saying that, he raised his hand and stared at his watch. He was really counting the minutes and seconds. Chu Ho panicked. He fumbled around and pushed the door open at the last second, glaring at him with a red face. "Do you want to die? Why are you rushing me?" Gu Jinglian turned to look at her, but when she saw the clothes she was wearing, she was inexplicably stunned. Chu Ho was wearing a chiffon dress. The skirt was very low, barely reaching her knees, revealing a pair of slender legs. The design of this dress was particularly unique. The inside was made of pure white satin, and the outside was covered with a layer of gauze. The gauze was decorated with handmade flowers. When Chu Ho wore it, she looked like a flower fairy. He had never seen her in a dress. In the past, when she was still Red Lotus, she always wore black clothes and pants. Her hair was tied up high, giving people a very neutral feeling. Even after giving birth to Xiao Bao, her temperament didn't change much. When it came to dressing, she was still careless and perfunctory. She didn't like things that were too complicated. Hence, casual shirts and jeans were almost her standard outfit. This was because it was very simple to wear. She liked black clothes because they didn't get dirty easily. However, they didn't expect that when she dressed up meticulously, she wouldn't pale in comparison to those celebrities on TV. The shop assistants were deeply amazed. Chapter 3473. When Chu He first walked into the shop, she was dressed plainly and inconspicuously. She was the kind of person who, when thrown into a crowd, would usually not turn back to take a second look even if she was pretty and dressed in dull clothes. However, she had not put on any makeup. She was just wearing a dress, but she was already stunning. So beautiful. The shop assistant exclaimed from the bottom of her heart. It was not a compliment. Chu Ho tugged at the hem of her dress in embarrassment. When she saw Gu Jinglian's stunned gaze, she thought that she looked ugly in this dress. She said awkwardly, "Why is this dress so short?" Gu Jinglian reacted and asked unhappily, "Why were you in there for so long? Didn't you ask me to try on the clothes?" Chu Ho said, "There are so many clothes. It must take some effort to try them on one by one." Gu Jinglian was speechless. It turned out that this stupid woman really thought that trying on clothes was just trying on the size of the clothes. Could it be that she tried on one piece and then immediately took it off and changed into another one? That was why she was in there for so long. The shop assistant respectfully asked for Gu Jinglian's opinion. "Sir, what do you think of this dress?" Gu Jinglian sized her up. Even Chu Ho was waiting for his evaluation. "It's average." He abruptly uttered these two words, seeming to play it down. Average? Did average mean that it was barely pleasing to the eye? Chu Ho said, "It's not suitable for me to wear a dress." "Why is it not suitable?" The shop assistant said encouragingly, "Miss, you look beautiful in a dress." Gu Jinglian said, "Pack it all up." "Pack it all up?" The shop assistant was speechless. "Sir, you mean these clothes?" Gu Jinglian did not have the patience to listen to their nonsense. He handed over a black gold card and said, "Stop talking nonsense. Pack it all up." What a rich and imposing man. This man must be very rich. After the shop assistant passed the black gold card to the store manager finished settling the account. When she took the black gold card, she was so shocked that her eyes almost popped out. "Did I see wrongly?" The shop assistant became nervous. "What's wrong? Store manager? Is there a problem with this card? If I'm not mistaken, this is the Black Gold Express Centurion card. This is also my first time seeing a real card. What is the Centurion Black Gold card?" The Centurion Black Gold card was the highest level of high-end card launched by American Express. It was recognized as the king of cards. It was said that the Black Gold card was only available to the top groups, such as the dignitaries of various countries, royal families, billionaires, and celebrities from all walks of life. Generally, there was no upper limit. It was said that the cardholders could enjoy the exclusive treatment of the world's top members. There were not many cards issued in the country, only a few dozen. Moreover, they were issued in cooperation with major authoritative banks. So far as she knew, there were only a dozen of such cards circulating on the market. If this black gold card was real, then this man's identity, he was definitely a billionaire. Or perhaps, it was a high-end socialite. Moreover, it wasn't something that one could have just because they were rich. The total cost of the entire set of clothes was about 100,000 yuan. The store manager wanted to give it a try,